Okay, everybody, we are live.
Great. I want to call this meeting to order. It's Board of Education meeting for October 19th. It's our monthly meeting, and we have a quorum. We have 5 of the 7 members here this evening. So let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get into the agenda, let's, I guess we have a recognition first, Bill, and then we'll approve the minutes.
Yes, what we do is we bring forward donations, gifts that the districts receive. We bring those for recognition by the board. So very pleased this evening. And Lisa may want to add to this a bit, any comments, but the Weston Gun Club had been very generous in providing a digital soundboard for Weston High School. And we may remember last year in the budget process at a key moment, we were able to continue with the critical new digital soundboard where the district wasn't able to afford it. We were able to do that through this philanthropic step. So Lisa, I don't know if you want to add anything so the board has full sense of this very important recognition, and thank you to the Weston Gun Club.
Yes, thank you, Bill. This all came about right before we went out on break for COVID. And the gun club had reached out and had, every several years they reach out and say, do you need something? And this was kind of a big ask. And I said, anything that you could do to help. It's not only for the high school, but it's used by the entire community because it's the high school auditorium. And they came back and funded the entire thing, which we were very grateful. They sent the check, and then we went on distance learning. So we never formally had the opportunity to have you acknowledge the gift and to install the soundboard, but we are in the process of doing all of that now. So we are really very grateful for their support.
Great. Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize the donation from the Weston Gun Club for a digital soundboard at Weston High School.
Second?
Second, Ruby.
Thanks, Ruby. Yeah, this is another example of how the community, is always steps up really to help the schools in some of the things they need. And I know the soundboard was a topic of discussion at budget time, and this was really very timely and very needed and extremely appreciated. All in favor?
Aye. Aye, Ruby.
Aye,
I'm
Gina.
Melissa. Oh, go ahead, Gina.
Aye, Gina.
I'm Melissa.
Aye, Taffy.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Can I have a motion for the approval of minutes?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve minutes from September 22 regular meeting, September 25th budget workshop, October 6th executive session, October 8th special meeting, and October 13th budget workshop.
Can I have a second?
Second, Taffy.
Thanks, Taffy. All in favor? Oh, any comments or edits to the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
I'm Melissa.
Aye, Gina.
Aye, Taffy.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Do we have public comment this evening?
No, we do not.
Okay, no public comment this evening. Bill, over to you on Board of Ed representatives.
Right. We're very fortunate to have two very talented Board of Ed reps. By chance, beyond being scholars, they are athletes. They are both captain of the girls soccer team. And with our 6 o'clock start, that was at the same time as an important training for them. So they did send in written comments, which I'm going to ask Lisa to share. And one of these meetings, maybe November, you'll get to see them. But Lisa, why don't you go ahead, please?
Sure. They referenced 3 specific talking points that they would like me to share.
You need to say who they are, Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ava,
Give you the chance to say who they are.
I'm sorry. It's Ava No, I can never pronounce her last name. Help. Ava Pola.
Papadopoulos.
Thank you. I got to say it fast. Ava Pala. I always call her Ava P. Ava Pala. Bless. And Natalie Haythorne. I apologize, Ava, and those of us that are watching. And we're really, they're terrific, and we are so glad to have them, as well as the full executive board, who took a big interest starting all summer, being able to communicate with them. The first talking point is the students love being back. They love interacting with the other students, the teachers, the faculty on a face-to-face level. And it's been much easier to learn and focus in the classroom than being distanced. And then it says they are really happy about the fans at the sports games, the in-person classes, the small happy events like they did passing out of goodie bags the senior moms did the other days to the seniors. All the small things that people took for granted have meant a great deal with them. They did want me to raise the issue that they do have the concern about their mental health with workloads and stress. And they said that the change to Canvas, all the teachers are on that new platform, has been a bit confusing and for some, and we're going to work on that. And they also are, straining their eyes on the technology. They say 8 to 10 hours a day. And they said that, we recognize the effort the school and our community is putting forth to make this year as normal as possible. However, with the schedule potentially changing on November 16th, we want to go back full time, but we are concerned about being online on the alternate days for the 7 or 8 hours. And they know that there's a lot of factors that come into play when planning this, but they do want to raise the issue that they don't like the idea of being online for 8 hours, up to 8 hours taking classes on the off days. One of the things I would say in response to that, Ava, Natalie, and anyone listening, one of the things we are doing is we have some focus groups with the VDL students tomorrow and Wednesday, and the purpose, and then it's expanding to the rest of the student body. The purpose is really, what are the best instructional strategies you are finding in that virtual environment? And we think that's going to be important when we transition a little bit later than everyone else to the full day hybrid. And so we are working on that because we want to give you the best possible instructional strategies to combat, I guess I would say, that computer fatigue. And they said that they are they're brainstorming COVID-friendly activities and events to keep the students hopeful and excited, especially in the area of homecoming. And we've been working on that with them. So that's about it.
And what I can do is they submitted a very well-written statement and compliments to Natalie and Ava for that. And I think they beat us to the punch. They said they could not be here this evening. And so they said, would you like us to submit something in writing? That came in through Jen Ryan. We quickly said yes. So I'll forward it to the board in a few minutes and it'll be in the public record, but very well done by Natalie and Ava. Very much appreciative of them. Understand they could not be here, but simply, and also then put in a very well stated written statement. So I'll get that to you and we'll get it in the public record.
Yep. No, that's great. And looking forward to having them join in person, well, virtually in person in the future. And, I got to tell you, this is, having the student representatives is incredible because I don't know, there are times when I think the students really helped us kind of come back down to earth and really understand why we're all here doing what we do. So it's great having them as part of the meeting. Let's move to the next topic, some new business. Bill, you have some retirements first, or Ken?
Thanks, Tony. Yes, we do have one retirement. Dana Getz, sixth grade English teacher, will be retiring at the end of the current school year. That's the only retirement we have.
Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the retirement of Dana Getz, Weston Middle School English Language Arts teacher, effective June 30th, 2021.
Second?
Second, Ruby.
Thanks, Ruby. All in favor?
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. So Bill, I think this is the next agenda item is probably going to take up a big bulk of the meeting, which is to really discuss the schooling scenarios. Let me kind of leave it to you to take us through this, you and the rest of the administration, and also maybe along with us, maybe start, or I'm not sure exactly how you're going to do it, but maybe you can start with a bit of a public health update, and then we can kind of move to the scenarios.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I think it makes sense to lead with the public health update, given that we're in this situation, have to repeat the obvious because of this international public health crisis that we're in. And again, Kennedy's done a great job to get where we are, but the numbers are creeping up. And so I'm going to share a few things. Then very importantly, I want to give time. I know that at least one of the principals has to step off at 7, and we've done a pre-meeting, so we're ready for you. And we're basically going to do an around the table for you, starting at the district level, then walking up School Road from Laura right up through Lisa as to how we're preparing for a significant adjustment on Monday, the 26th. But let me say a few things in terms of the public health. We did just finish Friday a significant set of updates to the COVID-19 health and safety manual. We're not going to blast that link out, but I will send it to all the administrators because it's a working document. It's one that we adjust and update as we need to. The top page actually is designed by Meredith Herman, very helpful, lists right there all of the modifications, changes to it. But when you go to that, you'll see about 7 major adjustments. And that's very telling in that where we are right now is for all the good planning, all the awareness of everything we have to do with COVID-19, it's constantly changing on us. So in Friday's weekly meeting with the regional superintendents, very serious discussion as we know the COVID-19 metrics in Connecticut are moving up. We also knew in that meeting that the basic standard was going to get shifted from a 7-day to 14-day, which mathematicians and other statisticians in the crowd that will flatten out any adjustments. But even with that, we did see an uptick into about the 6.3, 6.4 area. One of the things that came up amongst the superintendents is we've been operating with a system that has 3 bands, 3 gradations, if you will, with that key leading indicator, 0 to 10, we are supposed to be organized one way in terms of schooling, 10 to 25 another way, 25 north a third way. But the discussions amongst the superintendents regionally was saying we need now guidance because maybe those bands and gradations need to change. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's a different number because we literally are figuring out how to operate. So today, as many of you know, across the state, we do have districts going into not what we would call full-on distance learning, but maybe here's the new phrase, long-term temporary remote learning. You see in the New London County area, that's my language, sorry. New London County area, you see districts now closing for up to a month. I guess the Hartford Public Schools may be voting tonight on, or deciding tonight whether they close for up to a month, but not as we did in March where everything's shut down and then everybody goes into remote fully. but more of a temporary basis. You're finding also, kind of as we experienced here in Weston, when you have a COVID-19 positive case, you try and deal with it in a very isolated way. And we're seeing that around us. A district not too far from us, a middle school, 1/3 of that middle school is now quarantining, but the district's still running, the school's still running. And so that's how we're trying to find a way to deal with something we've never been through before, but fundamentally keep us in school, keep us operating. We're in very close contact with our public health advisors, particularly Westport Weston Health District still, Mark Cooper, very close touch with Laura Marks. We broaden that input out. They're our advisors. They leave the key decisions to us. They still are supportive of our move to be fully back in K-5 starting Monday. And here's my final point. In talking with them late last week, in addition to the superintendent, several other people in those conversations with me from the district, we settled on this, that even with the metrics creeping up, as we understand that we're really good in Weston at wearing our masks, at least when we're in school. I can't speak to away from school, but when we're in school, we're really good at wearing our masks. Families are clearly doing the home health checks. I see all those records, so superintendent, I know that families are being very conservative in terms of not sending children in if they're not well. Staff is doing the same thing. That even with at the K-5 level, a shrinking of the social distance still within allowable range, because of those mitigating factors being so strong in Weston, it's smart of us to try now for that full return, because even if we get COVID-19 infections, we would be returning for K-5 to that normal full back in. And we may be in and out. I don't want that, but if that's the case, we can return to that full in. Still, not strong support for middle school going full back in or high school going back in. Districts are looking at that, thinking about that, but as the metrics tick up, we see that typically it's those older students that if it comes into the district, it's coming in that way. As we're seeing nationally, districts are excellent at containing it, finding it out, and then not letting it spread within the district. I don't want to jinx us on that, but like other districts, we've been very, very good on that. The COVID-19 management team includes our assistant principals, includes Jared Sikowski. We constantly talking to Joe Maselli as well. I had a note out today on a middle schooler who's positive. The system worked really, really well once again. That's a young person who's not been in the district at all. We knew that fast, so we were able to communicate quickly. We've also gave an early warning note out to the middle school staff so they would know before anyone else knew, again, protecting all the privacy, but the system's working really, really well in terms of how quickly we find things out, how quickly we share that information with each other, and then what our next decision point would be. A lot said. Again, I wish I could on some of these things be, it's black, it's white, it's definite this, it's definite that. It's a lot of gray still, but you should be assured as a board that we've got really good people within the district with good systems and protocols that we're fixing and adjusting as we learn more, and we have great guidance around us to make the right decisions. So I hope that update is helpful. Maybe we hold on questions on that till we get all the way around the table, because there may be some health and safety related items that come up after you've kind of heard where we are for this major adjustment starting on Monday the 26th. Is that reasonable to hold on health and safety questions till then?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So let me we did post for you and the community 2 key updates that went out late last week. No new materials for you, but simply putting into the public record in a package. We've been doing that a lot the last several years, just so it's there. It becomes, if you will, a keystone document. But what we thought would be helpful now is to have really start with the district-wide perspective and then walk up school road. So I know Ken wants to do some updates regarding volunteer distance learning and other pieces. Phil's ready to do some updates from the operational side as we prepare for the 26th. Dan DeVito has some brief updates for you. Tracy also has some brief updates, and then Laura will start the walk up school road. One thing I will flag for you before I let go of the whatever I'm holding here, the baton or whatever, is that you did get the voluntary distance learning numbers Friday. They're at our lowest level, 261. We don't have all the analysis on that, but the principals, as of a meeting I had with them this afternoon, they can give you some thoughtful observations on what's happening. Where are we with that 261? Where are those students? We have to go back and track that more carefully, but there'd been a hunch that when we went into full return, we might have seen a big jump in the voluntary distance learning. It's actually gone the other way.
Yeah.
So they can speak to that a little bit as we go along. So let me have Ken jump in, and I'll hand off the mic.
Thanks. I'll take the baton, Bill. All right. So as everyone knows, obviously full return K-5 come Monday, and we're going hybrid full day at the middle school. So we're preparing, working very hard to receive students on that basis. And one of the big pieces of that is to be prepared for synchronous learning with our middle school students, as well as all students who are voluntary distance learners. We want to ensure that the experience for all students is the best possible experience. I do want to just highlight that as we do make this shift, I want everyone to recognize that, as we go into the end of October, early November, that even full in K-5 here in the fall of 2020 is going to look different than being full in 2019 at this time. Our desks are going to all be spread out in those classrooms, K-5, have as much social distancing as possible. The teacher, as you know, likes to, particularly the elementary level, have, desks clustered, working in small groups. So we are making a great step here in bringing K-5 back, but there are going to be those differences instructionally that teachers are working with and dealing with. And one of the biggest pieces is the voluntary distance learners, having them remote in from home and ensuring that those students are very much part of the class, involved in the class, interacting during the class time. That's big. And with that, we know that screen time for all students since the beginning of the year, and now with voluntary distance learners being involved in the class on a daily basis, to ensure that they are not on the screen the whole time looking at the computer. Our commitment is that students will be coming into their classes, but at periodic points during the class and the day, those students will be working as students would normally work during a class. They would be working on their own for various pieces, whether it's reading, doing some math work, or whatever the assignment is. But we will ensure that whether it's in their core academics or in their special areas, and there are going to be times throughout the day where there will be able to get away from the computer to get those breaks. And if you think of some of the specials like PE, obviously we're not going to have students sitting in front of the computer for PE. They would be differentiated for at that time. So, a lot of information that we need to share with VDL families. So the big headline for this week is that we're going to hold a parent guardian informational meeting on Thursday at the end of the school day, the teacher work day, at 3 o'clock. From 3 to 4 o'clock, we will have school and district administrators, as well as a couple of teachers from Hurlbut and Wyss, join us for a presentation. We're also going to be soliciting questions throughout the week from those families, and similar to we've done in the past, we'll have someone moderate those questions so that we can get more information out as to what VDL families can expect come Monday. And, that will continue to, evolve and improve as our teachers become more comfortable with having most of their students in front of them, and then some of the students remoting in during the day. So again, that's this Thursday, 3 to 4 p.m. We sent a late afternoon communication out that has the Zoom link and the link to the document to send in questions. So we're happy to do that and to open the lines of communication with VDL families. So with that, that's my brief update, and I guess I'll pass the baton to the next person.
Ken, may I just jump in? Sorry. We're going to be sending another clarifying note out to all families probably tomorrow, just to reiterate the professional learning and early release time that's built in now every single week right up through December. This is what every district around us is doing. I know it's very important to the teachers. And as Ken just said, it's very important for the volunteer distance learning family that nearly every Wednesday, but one between now and the end of December, we've got that check-in time. But we had a number of documents flow last week. One of them was a little contradictory. So we will have a statement out tomorrow. Ken's going to look at it, make sure it's clear this time. My fault, sorry. That it lists very clearly, call it the old fridge door sheet, that it's going to be one page. Families can put it right up on the fridge door or wherever the digital version of that is, so they can see exact dates of when that is. So I just want to underscore that's so important to our VDL.
Thanks, Bill. And I think Tracy, I think you were up next.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I just want to provide a brief update regarding special education and PPS. I think the most important thing I can do tonight is recognize the efforts of the entire special ed teachers, related service providers, PPS staff as a whole. They have really come together in the last month and a half for a very monumental task. I think you might remember me sitting here in August saying, we just got this document from the state. We need to make learning model IEP implementation plans for every single student. We need to make schedules for every single student. It's going to look different within this model. And the team has really risen to the occasion. So kudos to them. We're very appreciative of all of their work. In addition to doing all of that, they've been conducting evaluations that weren't able to be conducted in the spring, which has been hugely time consuming. And we have also had probably a record number of PPTs for Weston in the last month and a half, partly because of meetings that were not able to happen in the spring, and also just with all of the changes that are happening. So I just wanted to express my appreciation. For us right now, in thinking about Monday, all of our work is of course aligned with the work that's happening in general education. So our big task again is to be thinking about what updates are needed to individual students' learning model IEP implementation plans, and also what updates are needed to the schedule. So this came up, I think, in the last meeting. When we change the whole school schedule, right, and we start integrating things like lunch and recess, well, that means naturally that subjects, math, for example, are happening at a different time of day, which means that all of the support times for all of our students essentially need to be reshuffled and reconfigured. The middle school is in a really excellent position right now because the team there was able to capitalize on our October 12th PD day and really dive into learning model plans and the schedules. And the reason that they're in that position is that we knew exactly what the middle school schedule was going to look like on October 12th. As all of you know, that was not the case for Hess and WIS. We were still talking about, are we going with an early dismissal? Are we going with a full day? The teams in both of those buildings will be utilizing time this Wednesday. We have an early release PD day, and they are also just realistically utilizing time throughout the week because it's going to take more than a couple of hours to make those adjustments in conjunction with the school schedules. In addition to that, while the high school is not shifting right now, as we all know, we are going to make good use of the Wednesday early release PD day for team members who will need to make adjustments to learning model IEP implementation plans and schedules in advance of a full day hybrid model at the high school, hoping to get a jump start on some of that work, and then focusing on that obviously as we move closer to that schedule shift. I think that's it on my end. I don't know if there are any questions.
Okay, so I can jump in next.
Yeah, any yeah,
oh,
if there's
sorry.
no questions,
think we wanna
let's
have-
go through the schools and then open up to questions.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Tony, if you might, I wanted to make sure we get Phil in because Phil's going to do the transportation operations update quickly.
Okay.
How's everyone doing? So my update is really quick. So in working in collaboration with Western PD, we have decided to make just a slight shift to the traffic pattern at the entrance of School Road and 57. And the primary reason for this is to alleviate the traffic backup in the afternoons at Hurlbut. So what we have decided to do is between 3 and 4 on a daily basis, with the exception of Wednesdays, School Road will be closed to oncoming vehicular traffic or all traffic entering School Road from Route 57. K and 1 students will still continue to enter the campus via the parking lot and to access to do their pickup at Hurlbut. For grades 2 through 5 will enter the campus from Lawrence Highway. We're also asking all families who have a dual pickup both at the West and at Hurlbut to do the pickup at the West first and then to proceed to Hurlbut. I think Laura may have some updates as to the various cards and so that will be issuing to families so that they can be placed on their dashboards to help our staff just to readily identify those families who should be making a left towards Hurlbut. And for all other families, we are asking all other families to exit the campus, making a right from the west. Just like with all things, the change is going to be, it may take a day or two for everyone just to get comfortable with it. But we do feel confident that this will help the traffic flow. We'll definitely have additional personnel staged at various strategic points throughout campus just to help with the flow. So that's a quick update and shift to Laura, I believe.
Wait, sorry. Can we stick on traffic pattern for 1 second? For someone that it impacts daily, I just want to make sure I'm clear here.
Sure.
And
Were we going to go through all of it and then ask questions? Or do
oh,
you-
sorry. Yes, you tell me.
It would be, yeah, I mean, if you have a quick question, Ruby, just
No,
ask
I'll
it.
wait.
Go ahead.
I'll wait. I'll
Okay,
wait.
all right.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'll start with Hurlbut. As we think about shifting to our full return on Monday, it was a great opportunity for us to think back on the beginning of the year and how we opened. We are very proud of the hybrid model that we were able to put in place. There were a lot of certainly some kinks to work out, some technology issues to deal with at the beginning of the year. But the teachers and the staff really dug in and made it the very best experience for the students. Our students loved coming into school. We had quite a good number of students returning back from VDL to in-person for a variety of reasons. I don't have the exact count off the top of my head, but somewhere between 12 and 15 over the last month have returned to in-person learning. And with the small groups, just the one cohort, either through VDL or in person, the teachers really had, high quality time with those students. They were able to work with every child during every content area and to really establish those strong relationships and also to reach out to families. So as we look to the next steps where we combine those cohorts, We are, as everyone has already spoke to, rescheduling the building. We had already started on that in anticipation of it. It is a very different schedule than just a regular full opening without COVID happening. I think Dan spoke to that. Dan Doak spoke to that very well at the last meeting, that, in the summer when we were doing draft schedules, we really didn't anticipate a full return to school with COVID regulations. And then of course the early dismissal for Wednesday. So lots of adjustments happening. So, in terms of schedule changes, as Tracy mentioned, when you extend the day and the students will be coming in every day or Zooming in if they're VDL, we do need to make a lot of changes to our schedule. At the elementary level for Hurlbut and Wiss, each classroom has an individualized schedule. It's very different than secondary, where you run on bell schedule and everybody in the building switches classes at the same time. At the elementary level, all of those times are different throughout the grade level and across the building. Each class has an individualized schedule. Part of the reason for that is the special area teachers. We do have some shared staff, so we needed to make some adjustments to when we could offer our special area classes, and of course, keeping with our cohorts. With the change, of course, there's been some questions and concerns from the staff, so we've been working with them and trying to answer those the best we can. Their feedback is critical, and they have they're a unique perspective too on how the building operates. So they've been really helpful to us in offering suggestions and raising some questions and concerns. With the change, we are also redesigning the classrooms. Of course, we've had, our hybrid students in every other day. So the way the desks were arranged was done with the cohorts in mind. So now that we're having all students back in, we want to get as much social distancing as possible, so that it means that some of the classroom design is being reworked. And teachers have already started experimenting with that and working with that, and moving some desks around and seeing exactly how it fits. While we looked at it in theory and on paper, until you actually have the desks moving, you don't know exactly how it's going to work. So one of the challenges I think we've had, throughout the district is, while we're doing all this, we're also in session. So, you don't want to upend a classroom and upset the students with moving their desks around too much. So we're trying to do it while also keeping things as consistent and predictable as possible for our students. As Phil mentioned, we will have new traffic patterns. At Hurlbut, we have a very good process in place. The system is there for arrival and dismissal, and we have been trying to think through anticipating what that will look like with a larger number of cars. We've already been making a little bit of tweaks as we're doing it already in anticipation of what that might look like. Arrival tends to flow a little more naturally because families arrive on campus in kind of a rolling fashion. We know it will take longer, but we don't anticipate a huge bottleneck for arrival. Dismissal, where everybody comes to campus in anticipation of one time to be there, is where we're really thinking through most of the logistics. So for Hurlbut, we've got some minor adjustments in place. And as Phil mentioned, we're going to be providing color-coded cards for cars. It really is helpful when our families have followed our advice to really have, names on the dashboard and in clear lettering, so that, it helps our staff move them through the system, rather than, rolling down the window and, then a staff member has to approach the car, which we're trying not to do. So we'll be sending those out. So either home with the children later this week, or somebody who's coming back off of VDL will be getting those individually. And we'll be sending out reminders about all of those procedures as a follow-up to Phil's district email. We also, for Hurlbut and Wiss, this will, of course, add more students to the lunch waves. So we've made some adjustments for that. We've been working closely with Andre on making sure that he's staffed up and, prepared for having all the students back in school and the number of lunches. We are still in K and 1 will be having lunch in the classrooms. Second grade will be coming out of the classrooms because of the size of the cohorts. We want them farther apart while they're eating. So we're working through that right now. Just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Lots of logistics, of course. This year, most of what we do really boils down to the logistics there. We have to think through every little part of the day and to make sure that it is as safe and organized as possible. So I'm going to pause and let Patty speak. I know probably a lot of what I said is also similar for WIS, but there are some changes, some differences there as well.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of similarities, obviously, between the two schools. We try to be as in sync as possible. Laura and I work really closely, as well as Nicole and Kim. I mean, I will echo Laura that these first few weeks have been really wonderful in creating just really warm cohorts, and for the collaboration between the staff, and for the teachers to really get to know the students in the small groups. So yeah, we are working towards, so that we'll be putting them all together on Monday. So we're looking forward to it going well. I know the students are very excited about coming back, and I know the teachers are excited to have everybody back in their classroom, as many as possible. Nicole and I are working as hard as we can to finalize all of these schedules, so we can turn them over to our special education staff and to our interventionists to get those schedules finalized before Monday. It is as Laura and Tracy both said, it is a lot of work to accomplish before Monday, but I'm sure we will get it done. This Wednesday, we are going to be using our professional development time to continue our work on making sure that our virtual distance learning students feel fully integrated and feel fully included in the class. And this is work that we had begun earlier because we had anticipated going to full day hybrid, which meant that we would still be losing that extra time at the end of the day for our virtual distance learners. So we've already begun that work of really making our students more synchronous. We will also be continuing the conversation, as Ken said, about screen time. We really want to make sure that our students who are on the computer are not on all day long, really making sure that there are meaningful breaks during the day, which is part of that scheduling that we're working on, because it's because of the COVID schedule. We really need to make sure that we have mask breaks scheduled throughout the day, and then making sure that our virtual distance learners have time also away from that computer. We have already, or we're going to be starting to move the desks back into the classrooms. Nicole is doing a really accurate count of how many desks need to go into the classroom. So we're really only going to be putting in as many as we need to make sure that we have as much social distancing as we possibly can have in classrooms. The teachers want some time to really make sure that they get all the nameplates on their desks and really make the room feel welcome for Monday. So we're starting to move all those desks in starting tomorrow. As both Phil and Laura said, we are really mindful of our arrival and our dismissal procedures. We've been doing the names on the dashboard, but was worked really well for our students coming in. It's really helped speed up our dismissal procedures, but we know that there may be twice as many cars. So we are going to be making some change. We are going to be looking at bringing in one of our cohorts a little bit earlier than another cohort to start that dismissal process sooner, because we really need to make sure that we're finishing by 3:30. So we will be getting that out to parents soon. We also know that right now we use all 3 hallways for holding our students who are going to be picked up. So we, as it is right now, we can socially distance them in the 3 hallways. By having the double amount of the students downstairs, we wouldn't be possible. So if we'll start with our blue cohort, and then we'll move into our gold cohort for dismissal. And I think arrival will go well. That'll be easier to control. It's our pickups that we're really going to be looking at closely and making sure that we are handling that appropriately. Lunch, we cannot be eating lunch in the classrooms. We have too many students in our classrooms. The classrooms are just not large enough to have the appropriate social distancing. So we will be rotating all of the classes through the cafetorium. So we have been working on that schedule to make sure that there's not only enough time for the students to have lunch, but for them to clean in between each one of the shifts. So we've got 6 shifts because 3 grades divided in half. So we'll be starting lunch a little bit earlier and going a little bit later, but and then bringing our kids outside, keeping them in cohorts to have sort of a modified recess, long mask breaks after lunch. So lots of logistics, but I think we're in good shape. I think we're looking forward to that planning and PD time on Wednesday to really finalize some of our details to make sure that we're really set for Monday. I think I thought, oh, BDL. I know so we have had quite some movement with our VDL students. We've had probably about 15 students who are on VDL be coming back into in person, and we have a few more coming back next week as well as we have had some students go homeschool recently. So that's the shift that's taking place at our school with our virtual distance learners.
Okay, you ready for the middle school? So last week, each of my grade level counselors held focus groups with students, sort of really to get their perspective and their voice as we move to the full day hybrid. And the comments were actually fairly similar to some that Lisa shared from the high school. There is a concern, just in terms of, wearing the masks all day, or the amount of screen time, or when their cohort's not in school, or if they're a VDL learner. Some were concerned about just lunch and how that's going to work, understanding that masks have to come off, it has to be safe, and it just won't be the same social aspect that lunch normally provides during the school day as a break for students. On the positive note, the students were actually looking forward to the schedule being less confusing, seeing their friends more, even if it is social distancing. Actually just being in school and having it seem like it's a little more normal. One of the things I did hear frequently, that students, both in both the cohort and the VDL, as well as some of the parents, are just concerned about losing that every other morning off, just as a break or as a time to engage in other activities. So I think the Wednesday PDs moving forward as part of the schedule will be helpful in providing some of that time for our students. So I had sent out communication to the middle school today, just highlighting some of the important parts of the transition. I provided both a calendar and a schedule for the year. And our new bell schedule, we did modify it slightly to make periods 3 and 7 a little bit longer so we could have scheduled mask breaks for everybody. We also talked about screen time and our concern that students obviously don't log in for a quiet study or for lunch, or as Ken mentioned, for PE. We can leave exercise for them to do, but there also will be times in a regular class where the teacher will build in some independent work time so that students can work offline. One of the other things in my communication today was just the details about what it's going to look like for ordering lunch. I know that the lower schools have been doing this. The staff in the district has been using the NutriSlice app to order lunch, but I included information from Andre Santelli about for our middle school families on how they can order lunch a day in advance up to 6 o'clock that morning. Our teachers have already been experimenting with instructional techniques and strategies for managing students both in person and online. We're finding that headsets are key if we have students who are partnering with students who are remote or if the teacher's having an activity where all students need to be online. The ambient microphones are nearly fully installed at the middle school, and those have been a big help, especially for our VDL students who have been Zooming in. And now with 50% of our students Zooming in every day, we need to make sure that that's functioning well. I'm just looking at my notes. I think in terms of our VDL numbers, we have seen pretty much a consistent move back to in-person classes from several of our VDL families. Obviously, we still have a significant number of VDL families who are choosing to remain in that option. But just as of today, after my communication went out to families, we had 3 or 4 more requests to, this afternoon to return to in-person learning. So I'm hoping that means that parents feel comfortable, students feel comfortable with the safety precautions and the instruction that they are hoping to experience in person. I think that's basically the update from me. I'll pass it on to Lisa.
Thank you, Dan. So the high school plans to move to a full day hybrid schedule on November 16th, which will be after the end of the first quarter. The quarter ends on November 11th. So we're looking to the 16th to do that. Our schedule will look different in that we are planning to do sort of a variation of our drop 2, which both teachers and students really appreciated. So it means that instead of running 8 blocks, we would run 6 blocks and 2 classes would drop every day. It would be the blue and the gold cohort. And our challenge is going to be to get feedback on the best possible instructional strategies that we can do in that virtual environment for the students that will be on, so to speak, at home all day, because we need to keep the curriculum moving forward. And we need to do so in a way that we can still achieve the learning objective. The tasks might be slightly varied, but how to keep things moving. Our staff is pleased that we're going back to the 6 drop 2 because that schedule works for us. It's 56 minutes of instructional time, and it is less frenetic when the students are in the building. There's less transitions, for example. We still have some things to work out. One of them is the lunch details. Right now, we're most probably looking at having lunch in the classrooms. And the reason for that is a variety of reasons. One being that if we didn't, we would have to take the cafeteria as well as one of the gyms offline. And it's just really not, we think, the best way to proceed. We met with Andre Santelli. We also have Remember Open Campus that we have to work in to the factor of when we serve lunch and we're in all day, but we're up to it. And that's about it. Oh, I should add, we are right now at 6% VDL students at the high school. That's gone down since 8. Out of the 799 students that are listed, 51 are currently VDL. We are finding every week, 2, 3, 4 more are coming in person. So, and we're happy to receive them.
Thank you. So maybe we can open up to questions for the other board members. Questions?
I just have if I could get a better understanding, since we talk so much about VDL, get a better understanding, especially of PK through 5, VDL numbers, because the issue that I have with the voluntary distance learning sheet that was posted in CABE is we are using October 16th numbers of actual VDL students, but we're basing it off of a 10-1 enrollment number. So it's technically not apples to apples, because if I'm correct, if I understand correctly, there have been withdrawals from the district based on our decision last week. So what is the new total enrollment number? And I know that we capture 10-1 because yearly it's kind of state mandated that this is what we report to the state every year, is what our enrollment is as of October 1st. But just to keep things apples to apples, what is the current enrollment as of October 16th?
Yeah, we would have to rerun that. We have a system in process where at each building, the assistants run the numbers every week. We do that typically up through the October 1, and we typically stop that. I think we may have to keep that going.
We do.
As long as we do the VDL count, we'll have to do that, just so you're exactly right. I'd be a little surprised if we've had that big a drop out of the district. I mean, the principals who have a sense of those who request homeschooling, technically the superintendent has to sign off on it, but the first line of understanding that is with the principals. And they, I think, have found that most who've left VDL have come actually into the hybrid as opposed to go off to homeschooling. But you're exactly right. We can run those numbers. Probably, if it's okay with you, this Friday we'll have an updated set for you, because the assistants have to generate that, and it will be a new request to generate this time of year. But we could have that, so you'd have
That, yeah, that would be great. I just don't want to think in my head, because you mentioned that they're going in the opposite direction, which is great, but I just want to make sure if we're going to make that statement that the variables that we're using are apples to apples. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
But we don't have a number on homeschooling. I'm curious. Do we know? I mean,
well, we
you
don't have the
received-
precise number. Families,
because I
come
know
forward.
that I know you receive letters. You have to give them permission. Have you received 10 of those letters? Of 20? Like how many?
Yeah, we actually, just to be clear, we don't give them permission. It's their full right under the law.
No, but they
Going
have to
homeschooling.
notify you. Yeah.
Right. No, it's fine. I just want to be clear. Superintendent simply acknowledges that the family has shifted into homeschooling. There is a lag in that because it's that material being filed and then all the rest. So we
Is
have
there
to.
a way you can give
work
us a
that out.
sense of how many you've received? Like, are we talking about a dozen families are homeschooling or 100? You know.
Oh, it's not- yeah, we have to go back and look at that, but I'd be very surprised if this drop you've seen in voluntary distance learning just in the last week, if that is substantially homeschoolers. I think from what the principals are telling me, we talked today about it, Dan, Patty, and Laura may have had to left the call by then, but it's as many or more coming in hybrid. But we'll go sort that out. We'll sort that out. So I think
wanted-
we'll get that to you.
I wanted to just, the reason I kind of jumped in on that is because I wanted to kind of comment, and I'm happy to hear back from you as well, that there are going to be, I know of some families who have opted for homeschooling during this time. And I don't want you as admins or all of us as a team to think of that as a failure in any way, but rather families who have just found this is the very best option for their children, which we want. We want them to do that. And if VDL isn't ideal for them for whatever reason, and they've found a way to do homeschooling, I want to put it on the record that homeschooling, if we sort of quote unquote lose some kids to homeschooling, that's best for those kids, and that they may well be back and we will be really happy to have them. But I wanted to sort of put that out there as not kind of an indication of a low quality of education that we're offering and they have to go elsewhere. I don't think that's the full story.
Yep. Taffy, one of the things that I think we need to get our hands around is the overall enrollment issue, right?
Yeah.
Just starting from where we thought we were going to be, where we are today, what happened to those students who are no longer enrolled? What happened, why are, I think getting our hands around the entire picture around homeschooling, who is not enrolled and are enrolled in other types of schools. I think we haven't had the full answer there. And I think it's really important at some point to get the entire picture, because I think that will also inform us as to what the enrollment picture might look like over the next year or so.
Right.
So I don't think we have a full answer around just enrollment in general that I think we need to get our hands around.
Yeah, and the plan is certainly to give you that whole picture still as best as we can at the November meeting. You'll have Malona McBroom presenting. We want to supplement that with as best we can understanding of the shift that occurred in August. And we also want to get a better handle, which we can provide you on what our homeschooling numbers are. And Taffy, I appreciate your point. I definitely don't hear any negative view anywhere in conversations within the administration about a family's full right to make that choice into homeschooling. We understand that. I do know we're always listening though, and trying to say, how do we improve and modify such that if a family's made a choice, we want to listen and learn from that, but not to be viewing it in a negative light.
Bill, do you want to talk about some of the proposals within your document for Hurlbut and Wiss, just in terms of a new recommendation for a proposal for a dismissal time, or are we talking about that later?
Well, we've already operationalized. We sort of view that as an operational issue, meaning the Wednesdays.
Well, in your document, it talks about the other option is to run the in-school portion of the day from 8:30 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. So I didn't know if we were going to have a separate conversation about that option and the pros and cons, and we were going to hear from Patty and Laura about those options, or because it's in the document, so I didn't know how it was going to be weaved into this agenda item.
I think with those weren't there as a recommendation now. I mean, we had decided to proceed as we did with the full return K-5, and then it made the modification for the Wednesday early release.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was, I printed everything out and read everything, but it was the October 9th memo. I didn't know if that was still on the table for discussion. Okay, sorry about that.
I apologize for not being clear.
The only other question I had, and you sort of addressed this at the beginning, Bill, was, it feels to me like we are, this is going to sound bad, but no, the wrong analogy, that we are preparing for a return, as you said, Bill, under a kind of tidal wave of COVID that's coming back, and that the long-term temporary, what did you call it? Long-term temporary close down is a good term, whatever it was that you said. I think that's right. I guess the question really is, how do you all feel about pivoting again, which I know we want to do because we've been delaying long enough, too long before pivoting to return to school, with the notion that we might be pivoting again right back. And I know, Bill, you talked about this, but I want to know whether it is more complicated and adds more pain and struggle for all involved to make that switch. And I'm not for keeping everyone out of school. I actually want everyone to go back. I just want to know whether 2 pivots instead of 1 is going to cause difficulty for our children and our teachers that's really hard to recover from, or whether you feel you can pivot and pivot back with little pain.
Yeah,
and I'd love to hear from the admins as well as you.
Yeah, no, we can be, well, it's a good question. What I was bringing up in the whole point of the temporary remote, and I've been trying never to say shut down, close down, and I get caught in that trap myself.
Yeah, temporary, long-term remote, I think you
Yeah,
said.
because,
Yeah.
and this is where the whole thing is changing on us. I
Yeah.
mean, we submitted the plans to the state on July 23rd. We were required to submit the 3. The third was that, like in the spring, we would, what we called full-on distance learning, that we'd hit a moment where we had to shift totally to everybody being home long-term. And it's now more and more clear that Connecticut, at least, and some of the states around us are going to try and be much more focused in when you're in a remote mode than when you're in the building, and to try and isolate the numbers that have to go out remote and then to bring them back in. And that's a big change in understanding, even since, as I said, late July 23rd, the states made us submit our plan, and it had to have that third, that you're fully remote. And even now in practice, it's been more temporary. So I was simply saying, on an incredibly complicated topic, that full-on distance learning, we may never be there. We may be more in this temporary remote learning where you go out maybe for as long as a month or month and a half, but you're coming back, and hopefully it won't be that long. And so I think actually we started some conversations today to double check, triple check, quadruple check. Are we ready to go into temporary remote? From what will start on the 26th, and this is going to go right to your question, Taffy, how does that help us be ready? Patty, and again, Laura had to run off to get ready for the 26th, but Patty said when we're fully back, once we settle in there, that's probably going to be an easier shift to a temporary remote out.
That's
That's going to be the back and forth.
Yeah.
Dan and Lisa need to do a little more talking, but they themselves this afternoon said, we got to do a little more talking, but where they will settle on the hybrid full day, that's an easier toggle between hybrid in and the temporary remote out.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
So, and none of it's easy, and we're trying to not exhaust everyone. So I said, let's get to the 26th. Let's get into the week of the 26th. And they can back me up on this. I said at 3 o'clock today, we get into next week. We need to now really nail down, okay, administrators, we're ready. Teachers, are we ready to do that toggle?
Because the reality is that between now and next summer, we may toggle 3 more times back and forth this way. So if those transitions are really, really painful, then, but I have a, thank you, but I have a funny feeling that, that it's going to get easier from here. The toggle is going to get easier.
If you correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have a model where you're delivering in one form or another a different curriculum every day, and you're doing that effectively, then it shouldn't, in theory, it shouldn't matter how many people are at home or in class. And so it looks like we're moving to a model where we, in one form or another, especially for the lower schools and the middle school, where a different curriculum is actually offered every day to all. So in theory, it shouldn't matter whether everyone's all home or all in class. I mean, obviously, in practice it does, but in theory it shouldn't, right?
Yeah, but I'm glad, Bill, you mentioned that about the back and forth, because then for lower schools, are we just toggling between all in or all home, or will the hybrid full day be an option as well? Because you're managing attendance, right? You're managing, that's like the one variable that you're going to be able to control is whether it's 3 feet or whether it's 6 feet. And I don't want just the two options then to be fully remote entire district or fully in entire district, that we are still going to consider a hybrid as the health updates evolve as well, because there's still that in-person teacher time that we would lose that we could manage potentially in a hybrid situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we'll think about it. I mean, to quote an incredibly successful superintendent many miles away from here and many years ahead of this craziness, but it applies. You only get so many levers you can pull, and you only can pull them so many times. And so I think ideally, just getting to the full return, that's a big shift, and it's the right one. And so you'd like to just kind of have the two, but if the way you get some in person is a hybrid, we would look at that. What I was saying earlier is our numbers and our spacing in classrooms are mitigating success, the success at the mitigating factors, the mask wearing, keeping the space, families doing the home health checks, families making their choices about voluntary distance learning and homeschooling, taking those numbers into account, knowing that those numbers can flex to say we may at the full return always still have a healthy social distance environment and a healthy mask environment. So if the larger public health indicators are saying you can be in the building, you can be in person, that the best toggle would be for K-5, full return toggling to that temporary remote, toggling back to full return. And that's going to be easier for your teachers. It's going to be easier for your principals, which then's better for the students, right? But if the only way to get to in person in any regard is a hybrid, I mean, bring those numbers way back down, because fundamentally, as you know, the hybrid's a ratio issue. Get a better ratio, smaller rooms. We'd look at that. I just want to be really clear, and I want to be clear to staff that, we can only flip those levers so much. And that's
I
what
just want to speak
Laura,
to that from a building perspective as well. I know in theory, it sounds like it's easy to flip between schedules and models. It really isn't. I mean, it's a lot for a building to shift from one model to the other. And yes, we've done both of them, but every time you change a schedule, you're changing a routine for a child, for a family, for a teacher. It has a big impact. So, while in theory it's possible, I think we have to be very careful about thinking that we can easily shift between multiple models throughout the year.
Well, if you put this in context, if we have the new case, the 14-day trailing average of new COVID cases that gets above 10, right? I don't know what it was like when in the spring and summer, but my feeling is if we get above 10, we're actually going to probably be above what we've seen in the spring and summer.
That's right.
Right. So I don't know if I don't know, so we're basically going to be in a situation that's worse than when we were full distance learning if we get above 10.
Bite your tongue, Tony.
Right.
And this is where we as administrators have to be patient with the board patient with us, parents patient with us. Is this triangle,
right?
Four-cornered 5, 6. How many you want to get in this variable mix? We all got to be patient because we now know so much more.
Yeah.
And we still are we're still trying to the science is trying to catch up with us, right? So, and you had asked me this earlier in the chair meeting, and it's important to put out. I mean, Friday, the superintendents, because the decision has been really pushed down to the local level so much. And I respect the governor for wanting that, because what happens in Weston is different than what's happening in New London. What's happening in Weston is different than what's happening in other parts of Fairfield County. And that also becomes a great challenge, because you're a board of ed, we're educators, we're not public health and medical people. So we have to pull on a range of advice. So here's the very clear point. Last week, Friday, the super said, if we go over 10, show of hands, how many of you are going to shift your mode? Well, actually, we've been asked to, when we go over 10, consult with your public health advisor now. Consult with your medical advisor. Look what's happening around you. Don't leap to a new decision. So that's where we as superintendents said to Fran Rabinowitz, please go upstate and say, could you look at the bands? Could you give us some scientific-based guidance on maybe that band has to shift? Yeah, because we've been using that as the gradation. So very simple, lots of words. As the metrics begin to increase, We're gonna just keep looking for that guided judgment from public health people, medical people, how well we're doing with mitigating strategies here in Weston to guide us to what our approach is, and try and have an approach that keeps us in school or keeps the at home working really well for those who've chosen that, but have the shifts be minimal, because if we're shifting a lot, as Laura put it really, really well, it undermines the quality of the teaching and learning, whether we have students in front of us digitally or in person.
Patty
I'm
and
just a
Laura,
little confused. Oh, sorry, Ruby. I guess I was just a little bit confused because I felt like at the last meeting when we were discussing this, it was the scheduled time that was the disruptive factor to switching between the models, that it was the, going from a early dismissal to a full day really disrupted the scheduling in terms of the length of the class periods and how you're giving special services, those sorts of things. So if the day is the same in length, put the Wednesday afternoons aside for a moment, then why is it so challenging? And I'm no judgment, I'm legitimately asking, why is it so difficult to switch between the models?
Or I wonder if you could just, are you clarifying being at remote or being in school or going back to a hybrid?
I guess I'm wondering if it's a full day, and so the schedules are the same for the teachers. Why is a switch between a hybrid to a full day to a full remote that disruptive? It seems to me that the scheduling would stay the same. It's just a question of how you're addressing the students that are home versus in person. But help me understand.
So if we're going from where we are now on the hybrid short day to a full day is a completely different.
No, that I
schedule.
understand.
Okay.
It's once you're in the full day, once we've gone through the hard work of getting
Right.
to the full day schedule. So
Right.
our kids K through 5 are going the
Right.
full day. What is the difference between being in person 5 days versus being home 5 days versus the blue golds coming in every other day? Wouldn't the schedule stay the same?
So they would be the same for in-person, everybody remote. Those would stay the same. And basically that's what we talked about today, that schedule, whether you're teaching live or whether you're teaching on screen, those schedules would be great. To go hybrid, because they're cohorts, the schedule, because we're building now a 5-day schedule rather than a 6-day schedule. So a hybrid is on a 6-day. Now we're going back to a 5-day. So it doesn't quite flip evenly like that. And a lot of it has to do with shared staff. All of our specialists, we get shared between the middle school, we're shared between the elementary school. It's specialists are reading intimate. So that's much more difficult.
So it's because you're not doing 5 consecutive days of curriculum. You're still on the kind of 2-day
Or hybrid. Yeah.
model for the hybrid. Okay, whereas like the middle school is on, even on its hybrid, 5 days. That's the difference.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
I think there's also a difference from the student standpoint. So we're talking primarily about the 2 elementary schools right now, and just the shift for a kindergarten age student to be at home every day and then going into school every day or going into school every other day. I think that's what Laura was sort of getting at in her update. You're right that a lot of the scheduling logistics are set, like the special education teacher will be able to say, I have this reading group at this time for hybrid, I have this reading group at this time in full remote, but it's the actual living of that. It's the teachers planning around that, knowing that when I'm in this model, I have the groups in this order. When I'm in this model, I have the groups in a different order, and I might have different students in my groups. And just being able to toggle is challenging. You get into a routine and then you're talking about a totally different set of circumstances, especially I would say for our youngest learners.
Yes, and I can add to that too. Tracy's spot on with all of that. And I think we saw that a little bit in the spring, shifting quickly. And, it takes a while for everyone to get used to routines and procedures and mode of instruction. So for the teachers to switch to all distance learning, they can do it. And maybe, reading will still be at the same time, but now they're implementing the reading in a different way because they have 18, 19, 4 and 5-year-olds on a screen rather than, most of them in person and some zooming in. It's a different process. So.
Patty and Laura, since this announcement was finalized, have you heard from any teachers in terms of how they feel about how they're going to handle or manage VDL students and still get that weekly check-in with them and that support? Because right now, based on the schedule, they're only meeting with their VDL students, or that designated time every other week, right? Because then the alternating weeks will be professional development Wednesdays. So I'm just curious to the feedback that you're getting from the teachers.
So I would say that certainly is something that we've been thinking about a lot, is making sure that there's that contact, so it's not just relegated to that 2-hour time, that it's ongoing. So really thoughtfully weaving them into small group instruction throughout the day. So when you're having a reading group, that you have maybe your 2 students in front of you, but you also have a VDL student, and that's part of our PD on Wednesday, making sure that they're constantly checking in. We're talking about how we can make sure that the students are able to ask for help. If they need help, if students are off doing independent work, that they can still come back and say, I'm confused, or can you clarify something for me? So yes, is making sure that they are really fully integrated, whether they're in person or on a screen, and not waiting for time every other week to meet with them individually, really to create that time to talk to them. It will be a work in progress to make sure that, they've started some of that, but it'll be ongoing.
Yeah. And then Bill, did we finalize a parent representative on the task force with a VDL child, so that we can just have the VDL representation on the task force? I know our next meeting is next week.
No, we've not finalized that yet. We were going to discuss that a little more today. So that's definitely a great idea and approach we should definitely proceed on.
And my only other thing, sorry, just with regards to lunch, because I know now, Laura, you mentioned that second grade will be rotating in and out of the cafeteria. And I know WIS rotates in and out of the cafetorium. If we could just be mindful for, if you're having 2 kids at a table, for that odd child that sits by themselves at a table. It's a very large table to be sitting at by yourself. And I know some moms have been talking about that it's been happening. If we could just be vigilant to some degree and just ensure that these children are not sitting by themselves at lunchtime in the cafeteria.
Yes, we are working on that. I don't want anybody sitting by themselves. Even if we put 2 tables together, it becomes a big threesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We will do the same at Hurlbut. We have not been in the cafeterias yet. That will happen when we're all in. But yes, we agree with you.
Any other questions, comments? One thing what we spoke about in the last several meetings, talk about the reopening, really, we focused on VDL and the support for VDL students as well as staff. And I think it's great that we're reaching out to VDL parents. I think it's critical that we hear their challenges and to help us in configuring the VDL offering so that at least we're dealing with some of the higher priority challenges that parents and staff are having. So I just think that, I think it's great that we're shining the light on the support issue around VDL, both with respect to students, parents, and also with respect to staff. Because I think this is going to be the linchpin of a successful, next several months, because whether we're in the same mode or whether we go back to distance learning, it's, perfecting this way of delivering the curriculum is going to be extremely important. I think if we're, as a board, I think we need to hear if there's things that the administration needs, especially for the staff, in terms of making enhancing the tools that they have to make this better and better, and to provide the support that parents and students are, this is not easy, but I think support right now, both for staff and for parents and students, is really critical as we kind of embark on this next phase where there's a huge amount of unknowns. We've really have never done anything like this before. And, personally, I feel that, if there's something we need that we're not providing, we should, we definitely as a board want to hear it. Because the last thing we want to do is for this to not be as successful as it can be, simply because of the fact that somehow, somewhere, people are not asking for the resources that they need, that they're not getting. And, I know we're in challenging times with respect to budgets and so forth, but quite frankly, I personally don't think that needs to stand in the way of discussing things that the administration and the staff might need to make this as successful as it can be.
Tony, I think that's very helpful. And Ruby, to sort of clarify your good question about what's in the public record, what we tried to do there, and I'm sorry I wasn't clear, was simply say, here are the documents from when we last met. So there's the trail. We did leave out that intervening chart, but I wanted to show the path of here were the options we considered, talked very actively with the board about, and then here's where we settled. In the settling, I'm going right to Tony's good point. Short of adding staff, we made some significant changes as to how we can provide support within the VDL and for both our VDL families, but also for staff. So that's why we added in those, at least through the end of December, once a week, a check-in time and professional learning time. So that's to typically, if it's not on that Wednesday, somewhere in that week, have that. And we already had some of that built in, but that was a significant move to work within our existing resource structure to do that. Families, as far as I know, have been supportive. They've said we're getting an increase in instructional time. We understand that slight give back, both for the VDL to have that time and for staff to have time to plan and organize to maximize then that time you have. As we get into this, there may be other resource questions that come up, but that was a significant move to really listen and respond. The session this week, Thursday afternoon by Zoom, and the request for questions have already gone out to say to volunteers and families, please send us questions. Some will have to say right now, we can't do that. So if they're saying, please give us designated teachers, we're not there at this point. And obviously that'd be a conversation we'd have to have with the board. But I feel really good about how the principals connected with Ken and Tracy and Dan DeVito to say, what more can we do? And I think the design we have right now is a big step forward. We want to get it in place, get it rolling, assess it, understand it, see where we can modify. Because final comment, we're in a classing learning organization mode right now. We got to listen, learn, and adjust much more than we're used to in education when we're in the middle of delivering something.
I know.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to my traffic question.
Yes.
And this is for Phil. So Phil, with now, I know majority of the parents answered via the survey that they will be transporting their child to and from school. with regards to the bus, is there kind of a checks and balance in place now that we have the entire district returning to understand the volume on the buses? And I'm getting a bit more detailed. So if bus number 2 has more kids now going on the bus where you cannot sit a child per seat, how do we find that information out? Because I think that's what, I know there's no regulations out there, right, that mandates that you can only have 1 child per seat on a bus. But what are the checks and balances now in place just to understand the volume riding on each bus?
So right now, what we have with the transportation company is that they've been doing sporadic head count, so to speak. Once we shift back to the all-in, we'll have they'll do another head count at that point, and we'll continue to reassess to see where we are. Can you just clarify your question just a little bit more, Ruby?
So tell me, how many seats are on a bus, right? So if you have 2 rows, I'm going to call it 15. So there's 30 possible seats on a bus. And let's just say one particular day there are 60 students on a bus. That's two children per seat. When do we understand that that's what's actually going on? Because then we could have a transportation conversation of maybe adding additional buses to the routes. Does that make sense, or am I confusing?
No, it does. I think no, it's fine. I think once we're back in beginning Monday, we'll have a true sense as to how things are. So I'll have the bus company do a head count on for pretty much all of next week, so we can get a sense, and then we can start having that broader conversation regarding transportation when we next meet at facilities.
Great. Okay. Only because if we're going out there stating, okay, now the desks are going to be 3 feet apart, but on the bus you've got 2 kids per seat, I'm just saying we need to understand what's going on the buses as well.
Right, and so just as a reminder, so our decision to transfer it as is was primarily based on the guidance that we did have from the state in terms of pretty much what your levels are, in terms of what your infection rates are. And if you're pretty much what they consider to be low, they were a lot more flexible with allowing us to operate the vehicles pretty much as if things were normal. So that's one of the main reasons why we operate how we are operating. In addition to that, we do have in Westport, but we do have more families transporting, number one, and number two, because we were also in our hybrid, in the hybrid model that we were in. But pretty much the main reason why we are operating as we are is because of the guidance that we do have from the state. But
okay, but just to be clear, there really isn't any guidance from the state with regards to buses, correct?
There is, in their advance, in their reopening documents, I forgot the exact name of it, there is specific language regarding transportation in that document.
Okay, all right. So then that's what we are going to go by, and once we get the figures back from the bus company, they should adhere to what the guidance allows.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one other thought too. Bill, I think I'd like to see the data once we have it. I know we don't have it now, of the number of families that were in the current model, the hybrid model for K-5 that are switching to voluntary distance learning once we go back to the full 5-day in. Just because I'm learning during this meeting how difficult it is to switch between these models, and that we may not have as many opportunities as we originally thought to kind of toggle between them. So if that's the case, then I think we need to really be judicious in how we decide, which mode to be using, and that data I think would help guide us. I've received a lot of communication from parents who were hybrid, have sent their kids into hybrid, but were uncomfortable going to the 5-day full and are now thinking of switching to the VDL. So I imagine we would have those numbers come Monday or next week. So
the question is, what were the numbers who went hybrid instead went to VDL?
Yeah, the families that are switching to VDL
Yeah.
instead of coming in 5 days. I know we don't have it yet because it hasn't happened yet, but when we do,
Yeah,
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'm actually creating a little project off to my right here on that exact issue. Because when I saw those numbers Friday, I went, they dropped to 261. I said, where'd the students go?
Yeah.
Because we thought it was going to go the other way. And the homeschooling process in any year is loose. I mean, it's a bit of an honor system, but I want to tell you, so these are the questions we're going to get answers to. What happened to student counts that dropped during August and September? Question. What happened to VDL student count that dropped in the last several weeks? 3, what is our solid homeschooling count? And 4, I was about to type your question, but I think I got it already in those. Or no, what were the numbers that shifted when we went from hybrid to full? What was the count effect?
Yeah, basically how many families are opting out of our 5-day model that were in person to some extent and are now saying, no, thanks, I'm not really that comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I just, I think we have to be really careful when we're deciding based on the health metrics that are evolving, and certainly, the cases are moving upward in a nonlinear fashion. So we're seeing, substantial growth in these cases. And I think it's important to think about all of the students in our district. If there's a substantial number of families that are moving to no in-person education, and we can get more families having some in-person education rather than some getting all and many getting none, then that's a number we need to be aware of and understand.
Right. And at one level, just if we run the enrollment count now every week next to the VDL count. So if we had given you that, but that's, we got to rejigger how we do that. Who does that? We'll do that. Is we might have answered the question, right? Because our enrollment stayed pretty much where it is. We would have a sense of, okay, they left VDL and they stayed in the system. If it dropped as much, then it's that homeschooling number and all. But we will get that. And
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, it's great to see that we're actually moving to the next phase in this journey back to quote unquote normal. Hopefully the public health indicators oblige over the next couple of weeks. All right, if that's it for this agenda item, and quite frankly, again, and we say this every meeting, we know it's incredibly hard work to move from phase to phase for the administration and the staff, and we talk about all this stuff as if it's you say it and it's done, but we understand how hard all of this is, and we appreciate it, and thank you.
Tony, the cadence has been where the board, has met every 2 weeks, sometimes every week, to kind of discuss how things are going. How do you envision now that we're gonna, start with a different model on Monday? Should we be still speaking every, kind of 2 weeks to understand what's going on?
I think it makes.
I just feel like I just feel like a month is too long.
Yeah, I think in this environment, that a month is a lifetime, right? There's so much that happens in a month. It's probably best to keep it on a 2-week interval.
Great.
Okay. And do a check-in every 2 weeks. I think for the time being, I think it makes sense to probably stay on that schedule. And it truly, unless we're really talking about any major shift, it truly should be, between monthly meetings, hopefully it is a check-in to see how, and an update on how things are going, rather than, expecting, a huge amount of background work and things like that. Because, I know it's hard to prepare for these meetings, but I think a check-in 2 weeks from now is probably not a bad idea. All right, if that's it, the next two agenda items are for Phil.
Tony, before we get to those, I know we had due to the mislabeling of the time of the meeting, a public comment that came in. Can we have that read, or do you want to do that after the financial?
I was gonna do that after, and I guess it's maybe we can discuss it at this point in terms of how we handle that. So we had our agenda, the calendar, our calendars as well as the school calendar had a 6 o'clock start time. CABE had a 7 o'clock start time. I was informed that we had a public comment from someone who thought the start time was 7 from CABE versus 6. Process-wise, question, how do we handle it?
This is our regularly published meeting. We have the right to vote to add another agenda item for public comment. I think to be fair, you would have to open it up for everyone, not just one individual. So I would think we could say we're going to add public comment in at whatever time or after whatever agenda item, redo the whole process where you say we're going to open up the form for X amount of time and then all comments will be read.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I think that makes sense too. And I think we absolutely want to hear from the public. So let's
I
do it.
think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I think that we could probably, and I guess we can open up public comment for a period of time, right? Dan, is there a technical reason why we wouldn't be able to do that?
Nope, I can open everything up. I can open up the public comment form right now.
Okay, so why don't we make a motion to add an agenda item to open public, well, we have to make an agenda item to have public comment.
I would just say vote to move the agenda item further down. Like we had the agenda item, we just move it further down.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, typically boards have public comment at the beginning of a meeting or towards the end, so you would be fine. And typically you wouldn't attach it to particular agenda items. Some boards do, but this board has either had them at the beginning or the end. So if you at least want to stay consistent with that, but I would endorse you adding this agenda item, and we will make sure that we correct that error going forward.
Yeah, I would put it at the end after, I would basically, I basically put the item after after we go through our business, right? Before the super's report.
If I may, I know principals, if you want to sign off now, I think my hunch is the board would agree as we move into these other items.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for everything. Good night.
Night.
So can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education add an additional public comment agenda item to be placed at the end, or to be placed right before item number 9, superintendent's report.
Can I have a second?
Second, Ruby.
Okay. All in favor?
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Tony. Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we could go to Phil for the next two agenda items.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So as you guys can tell, things are still a little bit unsettled in terms of our numbers and just with our general operations, just for everything that's been discussed just now and also over the past couple of months. So just a quick update, as of the end of the first quarter, we have a projected deficit of 81,751, which is slightly lower than our open projection last month of 182,285. The projection last month was pretty much just to highlight all the various reopening costs that we had, and then just to have just an ongoing conversation with the board, and just to have things on record. So we definitely, things are still, as I said, not settled. We're still watching everything and finding different ways to cover the various overage that we have, so to speak. Just want to talk about just a few broad categories, starting from salaries. Salaries, as I mentioned, we have now encumbered all the salaries for the WTA. The only group that's currently not encumbered is ASME. We do anticipate that that will be encumbered for next month. Things are still unsettled. I keep saying that, but it truly is. And we'll, at this point, as the end of the first quarter, we do believe that we will be able to cover the salaries for the new ads that we have in grade 1 and in grade 3, partly from other ups and downs that we have, in addition to monies that we do have or do anticipate to receive from the Open Choice Grant. Salaries and benefits. So during the summer, the Insurance Advisory Committee, they were able to negotiate our renewal rates. We do have a budget savings for workers' comp of roughly $28,641. The insurance committee was also able to renegotiate favorable rate increases for other line items for insurance. Our LAP insurance saw a minimal increase. We had a flat no growth for athletics and both for ESS, spread, this related to SPED. Supplies and materials. We were able to move approximately, based on guidance that we do have from the coronavirus, from the CSDE and the OPM, we were able to move approximately $125,701 to the grant account. At this point, we're pretty much confident that that will be covered by the grant. In addition to that, we were also able to move other funds to other grants for software. We were able to cover $15,000 off the reopening from the teacher toolkit to shift that over to the ESSER grant or the CARES grant. As of right now, we have a current balance of roughly $30,779. At this point, we do believe that that will not be covered by the CRF grant. In addition to, let's further down, relating to the equipment, total hardware costs that we have for the teacher toolkit was approximately $81,250. Of this amount, $36,548 was reimbursed from the ESSER grant or from the CARES Act grant. An additional $24,557 will be covered from the CRF grant, which would leave an approximately $20,145 also will unlikely to be covered by the CRF grant. As it relates to revenues for the revenue lines, FEMA reimbursement, as I mentioned last month, that there's been some changes in the guidelines for reimbursement from FEMA. At this point, we have removed any anticipated reimbursement from FEMA. Our application has still been submitted, but at this point, I am not overly optimistic that we will be getting any kind of reimbursement from FEMA. So primarily, the main reason for removing that from the fund was that FEMA gave guidance that they will no longer pay for safety measures related to COVID-19 that it has previously covered, including cloth mask covering or personal protective equipment in a non-emergency setting. In addition, it will also stop paying for cleaning and disinfecting costs unless they're considered an emergency protective measure. So those are the main reasons why we remove any kind of reimbursement from FEMA. So that's the general update relating to the financial as of September. I do have a quick update from about the CRF funds, if there's no questions on the financial update.
Phil, just one clarification. The revenue difference between the previous month and the current month, can you just explain that quickly? Because it is a lump number that's there's a big change, so it'd be good to probably have a bit of an explanation there.
Sure. So two main reasons for that. So the first one has to do with the FEMA reimbursement.
Mhm.
The second one has to do with shifting of monies or shifting of expenditure. So the 125 that we mentioned, I think we shifted a total of $156,000 was shifted from the general fund over to the grant account for the coronavirus. So those are the main shifts that we have for the revenue line items. So what happens, because we've shifted and because we're fairly confident of that dollar amount, we've reduced the amount associated with for the CRA funds from, I think it was 350 down to right now, I think it's at $201,000.
Mhm. Right. So it's a, it's basically a movement. It's the change is really a result of taking specific items that we know that are going to be covered under the grant and moving it to the grant line to offset to basically act as an offset.
Absolutely, yes. Any questions on the other questions on the financials?
I have a more general question. Have we exhausted all of the philanthropic opportunities that are supporting public education during COVID? And the reason I ask that is I'm aware of a number of grant opportunities that don't necessarily support communities like ours, but that are there for consideration. And I'm just wondering, Phil, this isn't for you to be researching or looking at. I just wondered whether we are, looking at the kind of go-to low-hanging fruit state funds, but is there someone on staff who's looking at that, or can we provide some, grant writing support of some kind for other sources? And this may be a bigger question. I mean, Bill, you may want to look at this, but it's something, again, some out of the box thinking around funding for the district such as ours.
I mean, historically, Weston's not had designated grant writers. We have WEF, which is really important to us. As I think you know, Taffy, districts like us are not typically qualifying for philanthropic help. And
although usually those that qualify, when you say we don't qualify for state and federal funding because but also, there's like probably 20 to 30 foundations that are funding for remote learning relief and, emergency relief for teachers and, et cetera. So listen, I'm kind of offering this up actually to open a discussion around this, and we don't need to talk about it anymore, but I just wanted to say that there are, a whole lot of sources which I might pass along to you all.
Yeah, no, we don't have designated people to go through that process.
Yep.
I used to do that work quite extensively, and I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's managing the likely return. Districts in Fairfield County, others, we don't have a great shot. Doesn't mean you don't try and take it or look at it, but I think the board should review it and talk about it and then determine how best to do that work. Because as you know, it can be productive, but you've got to really invest in it.
Oh yeah, no, it takes an enormous amount of time. Believe me, I've lived and breathed that. It takes an enormous amount of time. So I don't want to put that on you. I'm just kind of thinking out loud about contacting WEF and some others. So let's not derail this discussion about the budget items, but I want to think about it myself and put it forward to folks.
Continuing on real quick. So just want to give a quick update relating to the Corona Relief Fund. So as we said, things were still evolving. We did get guidance last Friday that the state will be allowing certain portions of the CRA funds to be reallocated from the broad categories or specific categories that they have. In some instances, they are. In some instances, they're not. Just a quick recap. Weston's total allocation under the CRF funds was $446,605. Of that amount, 306,443 was specifically earmarked for PPE and other related items, specifically related to reopening of school. In addition to that, we do have for transportation $134,156, and also for personal costs relating to cleaning and PPE, $6,006. After $306,000, the state/OPM, it will not be allowing any reallocation of that funds to any other categories. What that means for us is this: as of right now, we have spent, or we know that we, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of transferring grant that we know about, $149,000 for FY21 expenditures. At this point, and again, and just one more thing for the CRF funds, this will only cover expenditures that will be incurred through December of this year. As of,
Just
go
to
ahead, Gina.
clarify, you can claw back to what we may have spent like in
Yep.
June, like preparing for this year.
Correct. I'm gonna jump to that in a quick minute.
Thank
So
you,
this
sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. So with that said, in addition, so shifting to what Gina just mentioned, so roughly 150,000 for FY21, and for FY20, roughly $42,000. So to combine $192,000 that we know for certain that we will be reimbursed from the CRF funds. At this point, based on our inventory levers and what we anticipate, I do not think that we'll be incurring at this point, unless there's some other things that we're considering, that we'll be incurring any other significant expenditures relating to PPEs. So it's very likely that we may not be getting this $100,000, and this may, if we're unable to spend it, be reallocated to other districts. That's point one. Point two, of the $140,000 that we can reallocate to other funds, we know that we roughly will have expenditures for transportation of approximately $70,000, which we know we'll be able to cover. I'm sorry, let's take that back. Cleaning will be $70,000 between September, additional cleaning staff using Afinico, approximately $70,000 between September and December. We anticipate to have additional transportation costs of roughly $44,000 that we'll know will be covered under the grant. Unless there's additional expenditures that we will incur, that money will also be going back. So I'm saying all this to say that the $446,000 that was earmarked to us based on a survey that was done July and August, we may not be using the $446,000. And again, we were very economical in how we procured our PPEs. We have all the PPEs that we need. So just want to put that out in the public record.
So Phil, I know next month you're going to submit the COVID financial impact sheet, right, going forward. Can I just suggest that where you have the coronavirus relief fund, mitigating fund number 16, can you actually just detail it a little bit more with all of the different components of this fund? Because so much of it is going so many different places.
Right. No, it is. And I have to mention this tonight because the deadline for reallocation of funds is going to be the 23rd, so pretty much this week, which is prior to our next meeting. There are a few other items that we are considering as a district that can be covered, that is covered under the coronavirus fund. And again, so any expenditures that is covered under the CRF has to be things that were previously unbudgeted. If there are items that were budgeted, they cannot be covered from under CRF.
So any of the technology upgrades that we had to make in order to be able to,
Yes.
the software licenses that we, are now incurring primarily because of this, they were not budgeted. It's decisions we made in the summer, the teacher toolkit.
Right.
You mentioned the PPE that we've purchased everything. I thought we had only made like the first wave of purchasing. Do we have a second wave of purchasing that needs to happen?
Based on current usage, I do not anticipate that there will be any significant purchases that we have to make for the remainder of the year. So we kept that very closely at central office just so we can monitor the usage. As I mentioned previously, we did not have data that would help us to determine how quickly these items would be used. But based on where we are right now, I do not see a need to purchase anything additional for the remainder of the year. If we do, there are a few items which we may need to purchase if we can get them. And these are primarily the N95s, which are, as of right now, they're designated for frontline workers. And so we were able to get a few today, and though the unit price for those is pretty significant, but we do not think that we'll need to make any significant purchases for any other PPE items as of today.
And then the other thing, with high school athletics, because they've segregated out JV games away from varsity games, primarily to limit the number of kids on buses. So now we're running a bus for the JV team and a bus for the varsity team. We're not having the same level of games as we had in the past, but we're running additional buses. Do we have an idea of like in the whole for transportation for fall athletics? Are we spending more because of running through, I'll use girls volleyball as an example, running 3 buses instead of 2 buses, which is what we would have done in a normal year, but we don't have as many games. So I don't know how all the ins and outs flow together,
Right.
But if we're spending more because of the way they've done the schedule as it relates to COVID, would that qualify as transportation related expenses?
I'll definitely double check on that one. So my gut is going to say no, because the idea behind the CRF OPM grant was just to enable district to offer more in-person learning. And I do not believe that any cost related to out of classroom work. So
Any co-curricular stuff.
correct. Yes.
So, if I think back to the summer, and Phil, when you proposed a list of items of PPE that we needed to purchase, desk screens were included in that list. And I know that it was like a 6-digit number attached to it. But now that you are projecting that we're not going to need other PPE, and if this particular PPE item could be included within a grant, I'm thinking like, can we get creative here with and help those classes that maybe have a smaller distance between desks, that are just making it 3 feet? Or could we use that PPE to kind of help solve that problem? And if we could, would it be covered under the grant?
Bill, you want to start on that, or want me to?
Yeah, sure, I can. So there's 2 parts to it, right? So the broader discussion is desk screens. So we did purchase some desk screens primarily for the teachers. There are other desk screens specifically that's currently on the market that I think Bill is going to address that. Now, in terms of space dividers in general, there are options for space dividers that we could look into, which could help. They're not desk screens per se, but they could help in situations where you don't have as much social distancing between a desk, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I was only speaking about the students, because remember you had said it was
Correct.
going to be this trifold, and you were going to get a sample in, and we were going to take it from there. So I'm just trying to think creatively that if there are funds available from a PPE perspective, could we look at this as one of them?
Sure. And I think, Bill, you wanted to mention something about the desk screens?
Yeah, I mean, again, good discussion here. I mean, here's the difficult comment. even though internationally they're getting used and locally getting used, we keep going back to several advisors, public health and medical. The proven value of this is not there. It's heavy perception, heavy optics. So just to be very transparent with Weston families and staff, if we've shrunk the social distancing, and we had this conversation, it's a great question. This conversation last week, again, with Mark Cooper and others, you don't get transmission protection from these. And I say that even though districts around us are using them. If people came forward and said, we would feel better about it, maybe consider it. And so financially, it's you don't, dollars aren't in the mix on this. It's just,
Well,
is it have a transmission value add? And the evidence on that is very, very mixed at best. And so that's why, and then in classrooms that are a little tighter, does this add to the tightness? So not saying don't do it, but it's not necessarily a solution to the tighter social distance. I don't know, Phil, if you want to add it, because we looked at it really closely.
Well, I don't know if we, at the end of the day, we should not be not providing a protective equipment that we view as, if it's viewed as helpful, I think we should provide it. Bill, if we're viewing it as not helpful, I don't want this to be a dollar and cents conversation. And I would not like this to be a conversation that, well, we need to do it, but we don't have the money to do it. I mean, it's either required or it's not required.
Yeah, no, yeah, dollars are not part of this. That's, because dollars not in the equation at all.
Right.
We're saying that, we did not see it as value add, but I think we can keep looking. I mean, it's a substantial perception and optics issue. And if the perception of that is that it may be of help, we can keep looking at it. And Phil and I have agreed on that. It's not a dollar issue.
Mm-hmm. Bill, do you want to move on?
Sure, absolutely. Jump to the Internal Services Fund.
Sure.
Started the year with a fund balance of $1,157,506. We have a budgeted expenditure of $396,900. That would leave an estimated fund balance of $760,606. Currently, through the first quarter, we are trending in terms of claims. We have claims totaling $79,916 and pretty much favorable in terms of a theoretical spend rate of roughly $19,000. So currently we're trending in a favorable manner. We'll continue to monitor this account to see how things are trending.
Mm-hmm.
That is the financial update for FY21.
Oh.
I'm not sure if you want to read the resolution or do we ship?
No, let's have a motion.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the third fiscal year 2021 financial update as presented by Minister Cross.
Have a second?
Second.
Quick update on FY20. I'm sorry.
Hold it. All in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Gina.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, see, Phil, we put Phil earlier because he likes to move meetings.
Good.
Oh my goodness,
Ah,
I'm
Phil.
so sorry about that. Quick update on fiscal 20 financial results. So as I've mentioned before, so as of this point, we have reconciled our books with the town. In addition to that, it gave us an opportunity to look further at some open purchase orders that we've had. So we have paid some bills and we have closed some purchase orders that we deemed at this point that we will no longer need. The plus side of all this is that there's an additional, we will end FY20 with a balance of $824,918. Of that amount, which let me get this right. 600,000 from that was transferred, was given to the town. 177,568 was transferred to the newly established non-lapsing account. With this increase that we have, I'm recommending that the increase 47,350 also be added. We make a request of the Board of Finance to increase the non-lapsing account by this amount.
Mhm.
And that is the financial updates.
Any questions? Okay, I think we need a motion to add an additional amount to the non-lapsing account.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve asking the Board of Finance to add $47,350 to the newly established non-lapsing account.
Second,
Ruby,
thanks, Ruby. All in favor?
Hi,
Ms.
Melissa.
Elke,
hi, Ruby.
hi, Gina.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we have some policy work to go through. I think these are all first reads, or not sure.
Yes, they're all first reads.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I think Melissa can largely carry this. The first one is homework, then we'll go into transportation, then into face coverings, and then into policy around hate-based conduct. But again, they're all first reads. And we let the principals go knowing full well that Ken could handle for them any of the homework questions. It may be school specific, but it is a district-wide policy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I'll start with the homework policy. This is a policy that was a long time coming. It's been something that the district has been working on for over a year, solicited a lot of feedback from teachers, students, families. The goal of the policy was to basically update the homework policy and make sure that it was in alignment with our current curricular goals, and also to apply consistency across all grades, and to very clearly delineate at different grade levels the responsibilities of the teachers, the parents, and the students with respect to homework. So instead, it also lists, as you can see through the policy, specific guidelines per grade. So the hope of this policy is to be a clear communication to parents, teachers, and students about consistent homework requirements per grade. Does anybody have any questions? It also went through the curriculum committee too, I believe the homework policy did. Okay, since they're first readings, we don't need to vote on anything, so I'll just go right through to transportation complaints. That's the next policy. And this is a fairly form policy just regarding a change to our reporting requirements for complaints regarding transportation. So there's not much there other than some requirements as to how we handle our complaints regarding transportation. Anybody have any questions about that one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, these are, what form did, I guess, just what form do these complaints take typically? Is it?
Well, I can speak to that a little bit. Transportation is an area where families have the right to complain right up to the state board level.
Okay.
I don't know the full history of that. Some of you may. Predates my arrival in Connecticut. It may be an equal access piece or whatever. But this is just better connected. That we'd always done that, but this simply is an adjustment as to frequency with which you are updating the state on any complaints you've had. The kind of complaints. I mean, last year complaints were bus arrival, bus not arriving, the complaints that get quite serious might be about contesting whether or not a bus stop should be in a certain place. And if the district denies that, then this is a procedure that families have the right to escalate that complaint right up the ladder to superintendent board and actually up to the state board.
Okay. So is there, this is just, is there a form these complaints take, or is there a process for filing a complaint, or is a simple email viewed as a complaint?
It's a process. So they would
Okay.
raise it with the designated administrator, then the administrator would look into that, and then there would be some of it's form-based, some of it would be emails related to it.
Okay.
Did anybody else have anything regarding the transportation complaint procedures? Okay, the next policy for first reading is the use of face coverings. So obviously this is something that's important right now with where we are with the global pandemic. It just codifies a requirement that we need to wear face masks, face coverings in all of our buildings, also in school-sponsored activities, transportation. It specifies what type of face covering is permissible, not the bandanas and that sort of thing. It also allows for, discipline as necessary if it should escalate to that type of situation where people are, willfully violating the policy. So it's just basically an essential thing that we need to have in place right now with where we are. Does anybody have any questions?
Melissa, it does align, this policy aligns with where we already were in terms of laying out our standards as well as the discipline approach. So at least from the administration standpoint, this in our minds is a very productive and easily added policy. And we'd argue a very important policy given how significant mask wearing is to where we currently are.
Right. Well, we need an enforcement mechanism if we're going to have a requirement like that. So the policy is essential.
Is this language from Shipman Goodwin? Is it off their policy board? Is it derived specifically for us? How do we align with other districts on this one?
Do you want me to answer that, Melissa, or do you want to?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no, it's from Shipman and Goodwin. There was one modification they had in their 12 feet as to a certain distance, but they put a note with that saying, please check this with your local public health district, and that's where we had reduced it to 6 feet. But otherwise, Gina, it's exactly right out of what they had provided. There were a few other minor adjustments that would relate to Weston on the discipline approach, but it was so close that this is Shipman Goodwin material.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I would expect us to have some modifications. I just wanted comfort that we weren't out on a limb and doing something out of reasonable.
I would say it's 99% a match with exactly what they sent.
Okay, and then the last policy up for first reading is a new policy. It's a hate-based conduct policy. This is something that's new for the district. We spent a lot of time discussing this in the policy committee. The impetus behind it is obviously the district goals of respecting diversity and fostering inclusion in the schools, protecting the educational environment. This policy defines what hate-based conduct is. It allows for due process concerns where an appropriate body would be making that determination, and it does provide for disciplinary action where appropriate. We were careful in reviewing this policy to make sure that it is not repetitive in the sense that conduct governed by this policy isn't also included in other district policies, so that we could be very precise in how we approach conduct in our district. So there's not a lot of overlap. We felt that this policy covers conduct that was not covered in other policies that were already existing.
So that was going to be my first question. Is this an umbrella policy, or is this basically to cover those things that are currently not covered? I guess you answered the question. It's not
No, I
meant
think
to be an overall umbrella policy.
To be fair, the policy did come from our lawyers, and it had been in, I think it was in another neighboring district. So the framework for this policy was in existence. But we did really read it thoroughly, and in Weston decide that, we wanted to not make it an umbrella policy and make it something that really just covered the conduct that isn't covered anywhere else. That way it's very clear, it's very crisp, it's very defined in what our objectives are, and it's very targeted.
Sure.
And it's generated from obviously events of the last year or many years, and it's what precipitated this work. So, and I think it became very refined and specific, as Melissa said.
Yeah, I think from an administration standpoint, the board committee worked quickly but very thoroughly on this to bring you this first read. It did emanate from Jim and Goodwin. It's in a broader way was in existence in a neighboring district. With full respect to that district, I think what's emerged here through the work of the policy committee is stronger. I say that with full respect to that district in their leadership. I think so being not brand new to this particular policy in this area helps. So it's definitely targeted. I mean, you as a board have to decide, and it gets into a realm, and there's almost a technical meaning to this. There are going to be a set of difficult conversations we've got to have as an educational community. And the board's concern, as Tony, you and others of the board have said, working on issues of racism, social justice, inclusion, that has a curricular piece, a staff diversity piece, and an incidents piece. This really is sort of at a policy level, picking up the incident piece, but also the curricular piece. And if you want to diversify your staff, candidates are going to look at what is the nature of your community, what stands are you taking? And so this targeted approach would become very, very important. And in a sense, the targeted final comment for me, please, the targeted approach of this actually strengthens the others because it underscores what's already in the policy framework that you as a board have established, this board and preceding boards.
Right.
I wholeheartedly, on a personal level, support this initiative and what we're trying to achieve. I guess my pause is just the way it's written now, and it's needed about electronic communication and the three things that it can cause, and that's where it creates a hostile environment for an individual at school. With our kids being on social media and these electronic communications that are happening 24/7 outside of school and outside of the purview, I'm not saying we don't deal with the ramifications and the fallout of that, but it's going to be an added burden on administrators to decipher where these types of communications are occurring and how we get access to verify that these things have occurred, and people are starting to take screenshot images of Snapchat posts, et cetera. Are we prepared for the minutia and the technicalities that are going to need to be handled to really do this?
Well, I think this policy probably helps in that regard because that's already happening, right? Like anytime there's a social media objection or comment regarding something that people think is not appropriate, that's already coming to the schools, and they're already struggling with how to address that. Here now we have a policy that tells you when that is our responsibility and when it's not. And that's just when it's our responsibility under this policy. If we choose to hold a meeting with a student or have a guidance counselor step in and give guidance and help in a situation that's clearly not under our legal responsibility, but maybe under our moral responsibility, then that's a step that we can take volitionally, but not mandatorily. So I would think that something like this would help our administrators um, as to where to divert their resources appropriately. Bill, I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Gene, it's a point very well taken. And I think, again, the discussion here is good. We've been having to do, I don't want to distract from the importance of this policy by the following comment. We've been having to do that work, having to figure out how to draw the line, how to get assistance from the Weston Police is necessary. And that's where we have a very healthy relationship in Weston with the Weston Police. It's relationship based, which is what we'd hope we could have in police across the nation. We have that here. But we also, based on the lab and other talents of our SROs, by chance, maybe not by chance, but given Captain Bردacki, our two SROs are quite expert in this area. And this just will strengthen that ability to dig in. But your point's very well taken, Gina. It's a very challenging realm. One thing I would add here that came up in the committee discussion on this point is, be it this policy or the others, we've been guided by Shipman and Goodwin to sort of think about, and Melissa's the attorney, but I'll try and say it clearly, 2 steps. Something, and this point is social media away from the school. Is that our concern? If it's a violation of school policy and rules, that's step 1. If it's away from us, but the second doesn't happen, as difficult as it is here, it's not. Second is, does it affect educationally what we're doing in the environment? Once those 2 pieces are met, standards are met, then it is our concern, if I'm being clear.
Yeah.
So we have to get to figure out, one, you got to know where it's going on. Then you got to figure out and we're backtracking, if you will. Did we have an impact here? We had the impacts. We go backwards to 1. So it is work and it's heavy lifting, but fortunately we've got right now the resources and the partnerships to deal with it.
And in a town like this, it's very hard to disaggregate where it lives. Does it live in the school to manage and jury, or does it live at home? And the reason for that is what happens, over social media inevitably ends up in the classroom, in the hallways, and those relationships then are playing out in our school system. And it's very difficult to to say where this began. The other thing that's happening is that at the curriculum committee meeting, we are beginning to have some we're continuing to have some very robust discussions about diversity, equity, inclusion throughout the curriculum, how we deal with that, how we enhance and enrich and infuse diversity and cultural competency throughout the staff, all the way through to the kids, et cetera. We had a very long meeting about that. And that's another place where the question of, does it end at the school, driveway on School Road, or does this learning have to continue at home? And it does, it has to continue at home. So the hate has to then be prevented on School Road and at home. So it's muddy. It's not a clear line.
Yeah, it is, but I think policies are meant to clear up the muddiness, right? I mean, that's really what
That's right.
a policy is for, is to determine, in all of this, what where the dividing line, where the responsibilities are, what are the have to do's versus our obligation as educators to do, right? And I think it's important to have that policy, or else this muddiness is going to continue, and then it becomes a discussion about, well, this is something that happens at home, this is something that happens at school. At least have a policy to clear up our response obligations to things that happen.
I struggle with policies like this, and I know it's supposed to kind of make it not so muddle, but I guess where we can say that there is zero tolerance, right? We can say that, that we don't stand for hate, but where I think parents get confused, and students for that matter, is the actual ramifications of it. And while I know everything is not black and white, and while I know everything has to be on a case-by-case basis, there isn't that strong understanding of, if you do this, you can expect this. If you do X, you can expect Y. And that's from and quite frankly, this is not just a high school conversation. This is also a hurlbutt and a WIS and a middle school conversation. And that's where I feel that, yes, while we're going to put out this policy and it's going to, hopefully clarify, I don't feel as a parent it's instilling that fear that if you do this, this will happen. And that's where I want to push us to truly, if we live in a zero tolerance district, okay, well, if it truly is zero tolerance, K through 12, you better be scared, because if you're going to do something, this is going to be the ramifications. Just like anyone with an athletic scholarship, if they, screw up, that scholarship is what's holding, it's kind of their moral guidance or their moral path, right, through those entire 4 years of college, because they've got this scholarship hanging over their head.
It's the issue, and I don't know. I think it's unfortunate that we put that burden on educators rather than parents. I think parents have to really are the ones that have to instill the consequences, in my view. I mean, yes, there are implications in everyday life of doing things that are hateful, or whether whatever actions, there are implications. But it's interesting, and I guess I don't know the answer, but it's interesting that we're I just hate to shift the burden on the educational institutions to have to come up with the ramifications.
I totally hear you, but at the end of the day, that student is still representing Weston. And so and I don't know a lot about this, right? I'm just speaking from gut, and I'm just speaking as a parent. And it could be completely different in a public realm versus, private institutions and universities. I just think that at the end of the day, that student is still representing Weston, and there should still be that fear of, if I screw up, this could potentially happen to me. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I would want to temper that fear aspect of it, so that as our children are coming up through the system, we reach the point where we have the confidence, all of us, to have a conversation with someone when they make that first mistake. So instead of it being purely punitive, which can create resentment, it can be a conversation from hey, you use this word and this is the ramification on another person, where it can be like a recognition of the pain or the discomfort you may have caused another person, and not just punitive to you. So you can hopefully, we can all evolve, to become better. Now, yes, at some point, if you're not evolving and the messaging isn't getting there, punitive may come in. But I think the thing is, like, no one is perfect, and children definitely aren't perfect, and they make mistakes. And I think I would hope that at appropriate points, we allow our students to make mistakes in other parts of their life. They may very well make a mistake along one of these lines, and I hope everybody can look at it that we try to work with that child so that child can learn, and it not necessarily be overly punitive at the first instance, I guess.
I think that's an important point.
Caveats, like if you just really cross certain lines, there's no, but using a derogatory term that they hear in a song, they may not truly understand what the implication is of that. And that's the delicate dance we're going to walk, which I think it's an appropriate task to take, as we, in curriculum. We aren't talking about just, not being racist. We want to be anti-racist. We want to be, how can we be culturally sensitive? How can we be, open? sometimes openness means you've got to have a little bit of forgiveness and a little bit of a willingness to educate and communicate when somebody makes that mistake. And so I wholly support all of this, but I think that in some ways, while it is designed to clean up, by pulling in that piece of things that are happening outside of school, if it's impacting a child in the school, we're taking on more and we're going to end up with more questions to answer in the future. Doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, but we just need to be prepared for that process.
No, I mean, your point is a good one, but it's one that we can't avoid because that is the existing law for when we're obligated. I will say, just taking your comments, one step further, I think also, we are in the business of education, right? I mean, it is, if our policies are too punitive or fear-based, then I worry about the chilling effect on free speech in our schools and the goals that the curriculum committee is trying to develop in terms of, having full discourse and allowing children to explore ideas and challenge each other without fear of reclamation, right? We don't want them to feel that they're censored before they even speak. Of course, if they say something that's in violation of this policy, then it will be dealt with. But we don't want to have an environment where we're chilling free speech. So it's a balance. It's a balance, and I think this policy is a step in the right direction.
Well, this is only the first reading.
Yes, you can read it as many times as you'd like.
Phil, budget calendar, budget assumptions?
Bill, are you going to lead on this one?
You go ahead.
Okay, so we discussed both the calendar and the budget assumption at the last budget workshop that we had. I think that was last week. So I think what we have here is just for the board to formally vote on these two items, unless there is a discussion.
Any discussion of the budget calendar?
I would just say, Tony, just for the public record, we did have a pretty substantial budget workshop last week. If anybody wants to go back and view that meeting, they can. We don't need to completely rehash it here, but just the video is available if somebody wants to go back and hear all the work that went on this item and the budget.
It was a particularly exciting workshop for people out there that really, want something to watch.
Are you ready for motion?
Yeah.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the FY22 budget calendar.
Second,
Second, Ruby.
all in favor?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay. Item passes. Let's go to budget assumptions, Phil.
It's the same thing here. We discussed the assumption also at our last workshop. So this is presented for the board to formally vote.
Okay.
And
We did-
we did make an adjustment based on the workshop in the enrollment section, item number 3 on page 2. We added a sentence that this is a projection to be updated effective November 2020. So we did add that. And I think we did, Phil, correct. Number 11 is an addition post-workshop. That's the administration endorsing the tri-board meeting. So those were two specific adjustments to this based on the workshop discussion.
Yeah, and also I think you added the assumptions for, I'm not sure. I think you added the assumptions for health insurance increases, right?
Thank you.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Phil,
Right.
just
Go ahead.
Phil or Bill, I'm not sure which one. Procedurally, since we've said that the enrollment projections in this document, we're going to update it. Are you going to reissue this document, or will there be like an addendum to it that says this is the assumption? Just for clarity, as far as when people go back looking at documents and if they're trying to piece together the flow of data, how are we going to, will you just replace it in this document and say, these are the accurate projections based on the November, blah, 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 whatever date enrollment report? So that'll be the only version out there?
No, I think it would be a sequential. This document is dated as these assumptions should be dated with the date that's on them. That date should stay. When you vote, I would urge this be the date locked down in this document. And then when you have the November 2020 update, that'd be next step in understanding enrollment. And there may be a third step because we're planning to bring you a January update on enrollment as well as part of the budget process. And actually, Phil and I haven't talked, but in my principals meeting today, they're building their budgets right now. And they asked, which enrollment numbers do we use? Because they're these, there's their own sense of things going back to our homeschooling, et cetera, conversation earlier. I recommended, and I'm hoping Phil, you'll agree, is use this as step one. That's what you got to submit against. Then you'll come back and adjust once we have the November 2020 and may have to adjust again once we have the January, but that's formulaic at that point. But I would just urge very strong, because then there's a very clear paper trail digitally with dates certain as to which enrollment was when. So this would be your October 19th adopted enrollment projection. You'll have one for November 2020, which is the update. You can track that. We will bring you a January update as to what's the actual enrollment then. So you'll be able to see all that. In meantime, we're going to go back, final comment, sorry. We will fill in this new challenge we have of where the students go August, September, where's our VDLs, where are they going, and homeschooling, what do we know about that? So.
Yeah, and I think in the document, you reference the fact that there's an updated projection will be presented in November 2020.
Yeah, I guess, I know I'm being a little bit of a stickler about this, but maybe even if we just, I know we have the date on the document, but like where we say Weston Public Schools budget assumptions FY 2022, maybe even if there's an additional line that says preliminary as of, and then with today's date, so that then when it gets reissued, it can be like as of, I mean, I know there's a date up in the corner, but I'm just worried if people are pulling up a document that has the same name, they may miss that date. So maybe just adding an extra line to the title with very specific dating information, and that this is preliminary, and then wherever we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can take two approaches. We can do that, Gina, or I think what we've done historically is we've updated the budget book with the most recent enrollment projections that we have.
Yeah, no, I know the book will, but I guess as we're getting to the point of the book, if this document is going to be coming back to us being updated at various points, I just want the document titled, so we have to preserve this version as of October 19th. When it gets updated again, we don't want to lose this version, but to Bill's point, very clearly, this is the version here. So just titling it very clearly, that it's as of whatever date.
Sure, that's an easy add.
Thank you.
So can I have a motion, even though we're going to make a small adjustment to this document, we can still have a motion, right?
Yeah, we can, I would just say that it's the preliminary budget assumptions.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to be working on.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the FY 22 preliminary budget assumptions.
Second,
Second, Ruby.
all in favor?
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Ruby.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Tony, can I just underscore, Jen, in our minutes, we need to reflect the new motion language, that the word preliminary needs to be in there, just so we make sure we get that. I just want to underscore that.
All right. Old business, we have a few policy items to vote on tonight as well.
These are all second reads. I don't know, Melissa, if you want to kind of run us through them again. One does have a motion that requires a vote.
Mhm.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, let's look at the ones for second reading. Okay, these are the technology ones regarding the district's computer systems. If you guys remember, we talked about this at the last meeting. It gives us the right to, monitor and filter our devices that we have, and also to for the devices that people are using that are their own property, also that are using our software and our cloud-based systems. So I don't think we had any questions about it last time. Has anybody read it since and had any other questions come up?
Have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the policy and regulation 5135, student use of the district's computer systems and internet.
Have a second?
Gina, second.
All in favor?
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next one?
Okay, so this is the second reading of the policy, the use of the privately owned technology devices. So I jumped the gun. I thought these were bundled. They're separate. The first policy that we just approved was our own materials and our own devices. This is when you have students bringing in their own devices, and the policy gives you prohibited uses, discipline, and the fact that they can be monitored when they're on the school network. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the policy and regulation 5136, use of privately owned technology devices by students.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Taffy. All in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Gina.
Hi,
Aye,
Taffy.
Tony. All opposed? Motion passes. Next one?
These are the next two are the policies regarding sex discrimination and sexual harassment. The first one, which we'll vote on first, is for district personnel. This is just adding in the sexual harassment requirements legally that have changed in Connecticut and applying them for the first time in the Title IX context. We did discuss this last time. If you recall, Tracy spoke about this as well.
Have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the policy and regulation 4118.11-4218.11, personnel, sex discrimination, and sexual harassment.
Have a second?
Second, Ruby.
All in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Taffy.
Aye, Tony.
Hi, Gina.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. And the last one now?
Yeah, this is the second reading of the policy and regulation for student sex discrimination and sexual harassment. Does anyone have any comments?
Motion, please.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the policy and regulation 5114.6, student sex discrimination and sexual harassment.
All in favor?
Second, Ruby.
Oh, sorry, second. All in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Gina.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. At this point, we're going to add the agenda item of public comment. Do we have public comment?
We did not get anything else when we reopened it, just the email. So I guess I should read the email.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this is from Greg and Jen Haythorne, 6 Winthrop Hill. As drafted, This year's budget assumptions submitted by the superintendent will have no measurable impact on budget work or educational benefit. They are only statements of the obvious, ambiguities, and lofty ideals, not actual budget drivers. For example, the BOE has never asked if a proposed budget change would produce better global citizens, as is the number one assumption as drafted by the superintendent. Instead, the BOE should inform voters of actual fiscal factors and assumptions such as enrollment. Weston budgets to the mid-projection despite the documented discrepancy to historical trend and outdated mythology. Weston's BOE and administrators ignore the low projection scenario, declining to deliberate or present what has historically proven to be the most accurate scenario to the PTO, BOS, and BOF. Goals and priorities. Weston budgets without measurable fiscal performance or academic targets. Experience indicates that senior administrators prioritize top spending per pupil, highest administrator to student ratios, and greatest facilities square feet per pupil. The superintendent has declared that rationalizing excess school facility space after close to a negative 15% enrollment decline would be impossible. Digital learning and education tech spending has been the lowest budget priority since last year. These are recommended as first to eliminate. Funding strategy. For essential projects and services such as the Hurlbut Playground, septic system repair, and sped transport, the district is dependent upon a combination of increasing charitable donations and annual increases in activity fees, dues, and ticket sales at rates far in excess of inflation and peer districts, as well as BOF special appropriations in excess of voter-approved spending, masking true increases in district spending. Today, these revenue sources are equal to about 50% of the average increase in voter-approved spending. Term. Weston's BOE devotes 60% of its aggregate time each year to the review of a 12-month line item budget increase, amounting to only 1% of total spending after contractually agreed pay and benefit increases. This despite no federal or state mandate to do so, and despite that software could perform the same work instantly versus the 4+ months required by the BOE. Weston budgets with no public long-term financial projection or operating plan, obscuring public perception of administrative performance. Because the superintendent has declared multi-year budget planning to be impossible, the district will manage perceptions and reluctantly pro forma budget a 2-year term. Flying solo. Despite the smallest and declining total PK-12 enrollment in the region, Weston operates independently, relying solely on in-house resources and skills. Strategic shared services and investments with neighboring districts are not considered. Contracts. Senior administrators consider annual compensation and benefit increases the minimum basis for requested spending growth and present this sum as uncontrollable with the tacit approval of elected board members. Cuts. Requested spending increases are cut versus changing and innovating. The threat of cuts to core education programs is the senior administrator's preferred tactic in ensuring majority voter support for increased spending. Facilities and maintenance. Any alternative campus operating scenario would ostensibly cost upwards of $100,000 in capital expense to produce comparable educational results. Therefore, Weston voluntarily defers tens of hundred thousands in essential campus maintenance. Accounting. Weston District erases the accounting record of millions in aggregate chronic annual overspending by adding BOF special appropriations to the original voter approved budget total, so the budget record equals total actual spending every year. SPED. According to senior administrator characterizations, SPED mandates an unpredictable enrollment, inflate otherwise controllable district spending increases, and overspending despite lowest in the state SPED enrollment as a percent of district total. 11. Benchmark comparisons. To justify top spending per pupil, the board compares budget requests only with neighboring districts, all with at least 2 times Weston's enrollment and better funded by a diverse tax base. Senior administrator and boards reject State of Connecticut Department of Education's annual district performance report as a source of objective comparative data. At top spending per pupil in the state and nation, Weston can do better once we communicate accurately. Thank you and stay safe. Jen and Greg.
Thank you. That was it for public comment? All right, thank you. Bill, over to you on the superintendent's report.
At this point, we've had a very good meeting covering lots of ground. I would just give one small technical update. May have been mentioned earlier, but just to underscore it, the state board has allowed districts this year only to use remote learning in the place of snow days or inclement weather. So announcement will be going out as part of the clarification statement on the professional learning early release days. I just want to flag for staff and families that permission's been granted. We are due to receive directives as to how to apply the flexibility. I think the most important one we've heard is that if there's lack of power, it's a snow day, basically, right? Because no power, no electricity, you can't function remotely. But I think it's a plus. A number of us have been advocating for this. Actually, some people, including Dan DeVito, in his previous seat, have been part of groups advocating for this for years. And now, at least for this year, we've got a foothold on that. But it's important because then we don't have to add days at the end of the year for inclement weather, and we can keep our learning rhythm going. Other states have been doing this a while. So we're looking forward to having this happen.
Great.
I just want to say, after centuries of snow days, this is a sad day for most children in the world.
Yes.
Kathy, I don't disagree. I'm not sure. As superintendent these days, you basically hand out bad news. There are going to be some people.
Oh yeah.
They're going to go, "What? How dare you?"
Snow days are human rites of passage for children, but I get it.
Yeah.
And staff.
Yeah.
The anything from the committee chairs?
I just want to mention that the curriculum committee, I mentioned it earlier, but I'll just briefly, we had a really extraordinary presentation from the staff, and the admins and some SILs also participated on, as I said, the diversity discussion and how we infuse that throughout the curriculum and how we make sure that our kids are really understanding the complexities and nuances of how we think about one another living in this diverse world and the cultural competencies that are required for our staff. And at the end of the presentation, it was suggested that we actually make that presentation available to families, and that we might do a Zoom presentation, and there was some enthusiasm around that. So we look forward to that, hopefully in the future.
Great.
And the only update I have, and it's actually really good and exciting news from the Weston Education Foundation, is they last week approved unanimously a $3,000 grant written by Christine Sakata from the high school. Christine is seeking $3,000 to purchase books from authors with diverse backgrounds. And this is to not only teach the students that these books can be written from different perspectives, but then have also different thoughts and different discussions, and also kind of even serve as a professional development for teachers as well. So that grant it was probably the easiest grant that went through the system and was voted on. So I'm really excited for the high school. And I will say that these books will be will have a lifespan of about 5 years, because they will be rotated all the way down, fingers crossed, to even possibly WIS. So it's good money, good use, good education. And I will say also, Weston Education Foundation is committed to primarily focusing their efforts around racial justice. So I've been in talks with Taffy as well, that anything that these teachers, any ideas, proposals, keep sending them to WEF's way, because they're very interested in supporting this initiative.
Great. Anything else from the board chairs? The one thing I want to say is we value public comment tremendously. We listen to every word. Just must apologize for the mishap tonight. We put it at the end of the agenda simply because of the fact that when we realized that we missed some public comment, this was probably the most efficient place to put it, not because we don't value it, but because that's just the way it happened. There was no intent to minimize it at all, in the event that anybody is wondering. The other thing, I want to raise the issue of in-person sessions again, simply because of the fact that now the lower school is going in full time. I did receive a few comments about the board still staying remote. I just don't think it's smart spending the money that we need to spend to, to have a good experience for the public and, in terms of hearing everything that's going on in the board meetings. But I'm wondering how everyone feels about staying in remote versus going back into the building for our monthly meetings.
Well, for the public record, I don't know if everyone heard that, but there are some significant expenses associated with going back in person only because of what Tony said, and that is the audio situation is problematic. We are thinking creatively about how to fix that. But that's the big issue at this stage, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah, it is. Dan, if we just went back with the same equipment we had before, what would be, I guess the issue is physical coverage and sound?
Yes, that's correct. The cameras wouldn't cover, you wouldn't be able to see everybody in a socially distanced board meeting. And the microphones would have a very difficult time picking up the audio with a mask on, with people wearing masks. The audio was not good to begin with those wireless microphones there. So this would just make it worse. So
Yep.
it would be difficult to not only see, but to hear what everyone was saying.
If we haven't changed the visitation policy too, then the only people that would be in person at the meeting would be just the 7 of us and the administration, right? I mean, we still wouldn't be able to have the PTO
Right.
representatives or the parents or anybody else that was a relevant speaker, right? I mean, if we had the demographers coming in, they wouldn't be able to come into the building, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
I don't
and
know, to me, it seems like of limited utility.
But I do hear, sorry, Melissa, were you finished your point?
I was, thank you.
Yeah, okay. But what I do hear is that, we wanna walk the talk. And if you're all going into in person, we want to as well. The problem is that the amount of money it would cost to actually make these public meetings of record clear and accurate and shareable, that's money that should be spent making sure the teachers and the students are receiving their messages clear and accurately and effectively. So that's a choice we have to make.
So, but would it be natural that we would see some sort of technology spend in the budget because, we all hope to get back to more normality as we move forward. Maybe we don't need cameras if we don't have to social distance, but the microphones we all know were incredibly problematic.
I think we need.
Are we going to see this as a budget discussion about how we move forward, regardless of if we have guests or not? I mean, it's something we're going to have to tackle at some point.
Yeah, I can't remember in which committee meeting we discussed this. Was it in curriculum? I think
No, it was in communication.
it was in communications, right?
And then we talked about where else, what other committee could we actually bring it? Bill recommended that we talk and say, what other committee can we actually bring this forth? Because I think we do need to have not only the conversation of the increase, the upgrade in technology, but do we want to put that brand new technology in the middle school? And while there's still lots of conversations going on around the life of the middle school and so do we want to talk about then possibly moving our monthly meetings to the high school or maybe even WIS? And there are obviously your cost is going to vary, right, by school, given the audio limitations within each school. But what we were advising Dan is that when he has someone come out for bids, that we keep it apples to apples with we get like understanding how much would it cost to go into high school? How much would it cost to go into the middle
Yeah.
school?
Because I think even, I think that we do need a technology upgrade. It just, even in the best of times, it's very hard to follow the board meetings.
Right. We just wanted to make sure that we had a long view on that technology upgrade, that it not be a short and expensive spend to bridge the COVID situation we're in, but rather a long view on how we can make this work elsewhere for the long term.
Okay, so we stay as is for the moment. I wanted to bring it up again because I've gotten some comments and a few tidbits of criticism over.
And we did want to talk about it moving over to the finance committee, to the task force committee too, the reopening task force. I mean, I don't know where it belongs, but
well, I think it was gonna, Tony, I think we should decide, and Gina, does the next conversation belong in facilities or does it belong in finance?
I would think if you're having a conversation about where, that's gonna be in facilities.
Facilities, and then go to finance.
And then when you hit a number, it'll go through finance, budget, whatever piece of it. But to the discussion about exactly where, that's probably a facilities conversation.
All right, so let's move it there then. Dan did go out and get his first proposal. That's kind of what prompted this whole conversation. So we had a chance to look at the numbers for the very first time.
And it was really high. Let's just say, it was a lot of money for a short-term solution for the middle school meetings. That's the way it felt. Am I speaking out of turn, Gina? Ruby, sorry.
No, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was like $45,000, right? The very first proposal that came through, Dan.
More than that.
54, reverse the numbers.
Sorry, 54.
So when we talk about that kind of money, we're obviously, and this feels just ridiculous to me only because, ridiculous in that, why can't we pivot like the administration has pivoted and get ourselves into an in-person meeting? And I fully support those folks that are getting, frustrated about that. But the bottom line is, why have an in-person meeting if nobody can hear it in the public? Unless, we record it and we send it out to folks. So, do we do a short-term, get into a room together, record a meeting and send it out with modest, if not mediocre sound, and try that? Or do we wait and send it through multiple committees? I'm open to both.
I think this is probably to get it right is a longer term solution. And I think we're, in terms of getting the work done and getting it, and having the community follow along, I think this format works well. So, I do think that we do need a technology fix, and that's probably kind of something medium term that has to be figured out. And we'll just keep on revisiting this. I don't see, and I think Melissa, I agree with her. I don't see the benefit right now if we're us 7 and some of the administration are the only ones in the room, Zooming, streaming out of a room instead of where we are now. So we'll keep the conversation going, and in the meantime, Dan could evaluate the technology options. Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
Yeah, we just typically, Tony, look at next meeting's agenda quickly. You will have before you next month, November, the Malone and McBroom demographic study. You will also have the class of 2020 statistical report and analysis. We did not have the data to bring you the gauging progress report, which typically has been in October, but we will be able to bring you some amount of what's typically been the annual statistical report and analysis of college applications. Also, often in November, you've had a discussion on preschool tuition. So that'd be before you. And then you'd have a second read on the policies you looked at this evening, and there are a few there that obviously you're going to want to be paying close attention to. Ken may still be on the meeting list here. Often in November, we brought forward a recognition of Teacher of the Year because it's that point that the state has worked through its process of recognizing the Teacher of the Year. I've frankly lost a little track of where we are on that, but Ken's been managing that. So that might be a topic for you in the November meeting. So that's what's before you in November. So there's some good meaty topics for you beyond the usual monthly work.
Also, between probably at some point between now and the next board meeting, we will trying to plan a tri-board meeting between the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Education. I suggested that as a kickoff to the entire budget process, that we sit down as a tri-board and better understand, number one is how the Board of Finance is looking at the financial situation of the town. And broadly speaking, kind of really in very, very broad terms, how the Board of Education is looking at the budget and how the town is looking at the budget. So we kind of understand before we get into the budget process what some of the broader big ticket items are going to be, both with respect to constraints as well as with respect to budget asks. It's not something we've done for a number of years, but given the last budget process, I thought it's a good way of basically starting the entire budget season by being able to really understand, especially at the top of the house, at the overall town level, with some of the constraints that we have that we're going to need to work under as we develop our budget as well.
So along those lines, Tony, are we going to have a meeting where we finalize whatever administration presents forward as what our district goals and objectives are?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't want to do it beforehand. I'm gonna, and so I think the Board of Finance wants to meet sooner versus later. I'd rather have the district, I think, Bill, this week, we're supposed to get the district goals. We should have a workshop to go through the district goals. Then we should, I know Phil has done a few pro formas, that we went through in Finance Committee. That with the district goals, I think we'll be prepared to at least be able to speak with some more information under our belt if and when we have the tri-board meeting. So I think we should probably have that goals workshop first before we do the tri-board meeting. Yeah. So Bill, that was something that was supposed to be out this week.
Yeah, we're working on it. Also, though, with the transition as of Monday, schools are straight out doing that. I've got draft material and all the rest. So yeah, by the end of the week, we'll have a draft of materials. And because this summer we put that all on hold and the schools were busy getting organized for opening and now organized for adjusting. You'll have something. The one challenge will be you're not going to have dollars attached to any of that. That's what you get with your budget submission. So having the tri-board meeting around, I could see the question immediately being, okay, you've stated that as a goal. What's that going to cost? You're not going to have that yet.
No. But I think these are, I think having some broad goals, and I don't think this is about numbers necessarily. I think this is basically a meeting of the minds and understanding expectations on both sides.
I was going to say, I think
we actually dive into books.
It's an extension of the assumptions too, right? That's right. We need to get assumptions from the town as well.
Yeah. Anything else? No? It's a short one tonight. Kevin, Kevin, a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Great, second.
Second.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.